Hello.
Hey, Doug.
Hey there. How are you?
Good. I'm at town hall.
Hi, Peggy.
How's it going?
Peggy, you're that way.
Oh, I am?
Yeah,
Yep.
you're sideways.
Now am I better?
Upside down.
Now am I
Turn it
better?
the other way. Nope.
That
Turn
way?
it up.
I'm
One more
joking.
time.
I'm joking.
There we go.
I can sit sideways. That's okay.
There we go. Perfect.
Okay, guys. How are you?
Oh, very well. And you?
Oh, dandy. Thank you.
Yep.
Excellent.
All good.
Hey, John.
How are you, Peggy?
Good. You're back home?
Not in Highland Beach yet, but working on it.
Okay, cool. Well, we're getting hurricane windows in, so between the dust and the noise, here I am in quiet little wonderful town hall.
Let's hope you don't need those.
I know. Well, some of ours were 40 years old, guys. We just couldn't. We got 1.5 kids through grad school. We really needed the windows, so we did it.
You were due.
We'll have a party and have you all with Glenn.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, you only talk-
Peggy, are you
Yes.
using your computer or your phone at the town hall?
Phone.
Oh, my. What's the deal with your computer? No?
I could have used it here, but I forgot it because I rushed out and I had buried it so that the dust doesn't get it. I mean, our house is broken down with everything but the furniture out. So
Oh,
at the computer at my house, we just don't have a good internet signal there. But after the windows, my husband's going to try to up it.
very good.
Maybe we'll get someone in like yourself to give us a hand. Actually, our IT guy.
Oh, there's Linelda. There's Marshall.
Hey, Marsh. I don't see them. How come you see them? I have to go sideways again.
Or
Are you in town hall or are you at home?
I'm in town hall because our windows are going in and the dust is pervasive like you wouldn't believe.
I was going to say that it's a very official looking background you have. So
Yes, very official. I'm going to bring in a plant or something. It looks good.
she's on her phone in the town hall.
Well,
Is
there's
it a
picture.
bad shot? Maybe I'll move by the picture.
no,
There's
I
a
think it
pic-
all looks fine. Just looks very proper.
Oh, it's proper. Yes. It's very nice here. Plus it's quiet, no dogs, no cats.
So we're missing one commissioner.
That one.
Oh, we need Evelyn.
And-
We need our other woman.
Yes, right.
Joking. No, we
Come
love
on,
you.
Evelyn. Let's give her a text, see what's going on. Somebody want to contact her?
Sure.
We have a rather full agenda.
Yes, we do. I have double coffee. So I don't mispronounce words again. It's like blah, 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 blah. So what did you do last weekend, Doug? We can fill the airtime here chit-chatting.
Last weekend, we brought some Italian food in from the restaurant. So that was good.
The one around the corner where I saw you last year?
No, we went to Paisanos, which is directly across.
Oh, we've
But I
been there.
really do like that one. That's really good. We go
Yeah.
times to pick up food also. But,
Yep, yep,
Here's Evelyn.
We don't go inside.
right, I understand.
Yep, there's Evelyn.
Yay.
And there's a Glenn. So I think we're good to go, right? Okay, shall we begin? It is 1:34, so we can officially start. And Linelda, if you'll call the roll, please.
Commissioner Shoemaker,
Present.
Commissioner David,
Present.
Commissioner Gossip Sideman,
Present.
Vice Mayor Bobby,
Present.
Mayor Hillman,
Present.
Town Attorney Tercivia,
Present.
and Town Manager Labadie.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, if we can stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
Of the United States of
States
America.
of America, and to the republic
Republic
for
for
which
which
it
it stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
with justice and liberty.
and justice for all.
for all.
Are there any additions, deletions to the agenda? If there are not, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move we approve the agenda.
There a
I second.
All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
So passed. We'll move on now to presentations and proclamations, and I'll send this over to Marshall, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and Commission. As you all can see on your agenda and our viewing audience at home, the much awaited 2020 revenue sufficiency and rate study for water and wastewater systems is presented by our consultants. I will have them introduce themselves. Are they with us, Teresa? Are they available only by phone, or do we see them on the screen?
I think I see them on the screen.
I must be missing something. Let me get everybody. Okay, there they are. They're in their room there. Okay. Alice is with us. They have a presentation. I don't take too much going over this, but the premise was that every 5 years we do a rate and revenue sufficiency study, how our rates are going. Our conversations leading into this project or this analysis was one to begin to look at, I would say, two main areas. One is transferring or moving the debt off of the general fund and putting it into the utility. So the utility is 100% self-sufficient as it relates to all of its costs. And then secondly, looking at a more equitable wastewater charge system where we start to look at volumetric charge that goes with ties to usage. So we've added those two items in. You have the report before you. We've each one-on-one, if you will, have discussed this at some level. But I will turn that over to Robert and Mark. If you guys would introduce yourselves, and then Teresa will bring up the presentation and we will go from there.
Good afternoon. Can you hear us okay, or?
Yes.
Yep, no problem.
Good. Technology's working today. I'm really glad. We're going to go through the PowerPoint presentation that we have. We prepared today. Again, for the record, my name is Robert Ory. I'm an Executive Vice President with Raptalis. My background, I'm a certified public accountant with probably more years doing this than I like, over 40 years. And with me also is Mark Tuma, who's been assisting me quite extensively on all the analytics and data compilation and evaluations. And we're real glad to have him here with us today as well. As we're going
Robert, one question, if I may, before you begin.
Yes, sir.
Through this, if we have questions as you're moving through it, would you like us to ask those questions, or do you want us to hold them to the end?
I was just getting ready to say that. You can, whatever your preference, if you want to ask the question Mayor, right, as I'm speaking, because it's fresh on your mind, I'm way okay with that. Or if you want to wait to the end, it doesn't really matter to me. Whatever works best for you, we'll do.
Okay, it is rather complex, so if you don't mind, I think it may be best if we do ask as you go through it.
Yes.
It probably would be better so that we can make sure that we understand everything as you go along, because one thing seems to build on the next.
Right, and it is a little technical, and sometimes I may use words that aren't familiar. So please, if there's something that needs to be clarified or repeated or a question or whatever, that's fine. And so I want to make sure that you guys answer all your questions and understand what we've done, and any feedback that you give us back to us that if we need to maybe look at something different, we can do that as well.
Okay, so fellow commissioners, as he goes through it, don't even raise your hand, just jump right in.
Okay,
Okay.
Robert.
All right, we're gonna move our PowerPoint in here. Let's see if we can share the screen here. There you go. Can you all see that okay?
Yes,
You
we
should.
can.
A cover slide, great. Let me see here. I got to get my bearings here. Why is it not moving? There we go. What I'd like to talk about today, just give a little small overview about the purpose of the study, an overview of the utility. Probably spend some time on what's affecting the rates, those drivers that affect the rates. Talk about our observations, findings. Then talk about the design of the rate alternatives that we've come up with right now. And then we'll go into our recommendations and any other action items that you'll all see fit. The study can you, hold on 1 second. Can we move that over a little bit, or? Oh, I don't want to get rid of it.
Okay.
Hold on, I'm just trying to move the pictures here. That's not gonna work. That's not gonna work. Okay. We're a little technology here. Okay, yeah, put it over there. That's good. Can you make it bigger?
Yeah.
I'm trying to, right now your pictures are covering my slides. So we're trying to get we're trying to get it all worked out here. Okay, great, that's perfect. Sorry about that. The primary purpose, there's really two. One was to develop a cost recovery plan that's sustainable and achievable, and produces the rate revenues necessary to meet what we call your revenue requirements. The revenue requirements really represents all those expenditures and costs that need to be funded from rates over time. And that includes O&M expenses, as you see in the little chart to the left, to the right, capital funding plan. We look at your fiscal position. This also would include the debt reclassification to the utility that was mentioned earlier, and whatnot. As we determined the rate revenue needs, then we came up with an alternative water and wastewater rate structure for your consideration. And that was the primary purpose of the study. So although they're connected to each other, this doesn't work. Although they're connected to each other, they are independent of each other to some degree. There we go. Why don't you just run it now? I want to give you a couple little factoids real quick as we're going through this, and I want you to kind of remember this, because I'll be coming back to this. You've got about 460 accounts, but you have a lot more, yeah, it's good. You have a lot more dwelling units, residential dwelling units, or EDUs, almost 4,400. You have a lot of multifamily customers, as you well know, that make up that 4,000 EDUs. The average water use per customer expressed on a monthly basis, not a bi-monthly basis. Single family is about 25,000 gallons a month. Multifamily, those condo units are about 5,000 gallons a month. That's very important to remember that as we move forward. You bill bi-monthly, so you may be more familiar with 50,000 gallons for single family, we talk a lot on a monthly basis because we'll show some rate comparisons later with other utilities on a monthly basis because most bill monthly. Your rate revenues, a little over $3 million right now. There's no dollar sign. And you get a pretty high fixed cost recovery relationship. 63% of your revenues are recovered from the base charge or the flat fee. That's very stable revenue, as you know. It's very predictable. You know you're going to get that flat fee every 2 months. You're going to get that. That doesn't vary by flow. You got a lot of investment in your system, over $31 million of gross depreciable assets. But that, when you compare the other utilities of the same size, it's a little different because you purchase all your wastewater treatment from Delray. So wastewater treatment costs are not in that $31 million. But any renewal, and so if you think about renewals and replacements, capital reinvestment into the system over time, you're focused on the $31 million. In reality, it's going to be a little higher than that because Delray bills you for those type of costs. Your annual depreciation on that $31 million, right now is about 840,000 gallons, $840,000 per year. And it's been about, as the city manager, town manager said, it's been about 5 years, going on close to 5 years since the last rate study is performed. And it's time to kind of update and see where we are. What are affecting the rates and the need to adjust rates? I've got several bullets here. The first one is you have limited customer net revenue growth. You're essentially built out, as you all know. So as costs increase, no matter what they are, whether it's O&M or increased debt or increased capital needs, primarily without growth, most of that will be recovered through rate adjustments. And we like to have these rate adjustments because we want to maintain what I call net revenue margins. And that's the dollars available after you pay your O&M expense. That's the amount of dollars that's available for debt payments, capital. It's like a contribution margin in a manufacturing company. Once you get past your O&M costs, what's left over? So we want to make sure we maintain those margins to fund capital and debt. As you well know, inflation always affects us every year in our operation expenses. Our assumption based on the Congressional Budget Office for the CPI projections is about 2.3% per year. I will tell you that that we just received a CBO update, and that number is probably a little lower for fiscal 21, but it's still probably a good average. We also have increasing water treatment plant costs. RO water is a highly technical process, usually a bit more expensive to run than someone who may have something like lime softening or an older process. It produces, as you well know, a high quality water. We've assumed increasing wastewater treatment costs in Delray as well over time. And the average increase in O&M expense we have is about 3.1%, a little higher than inflation. I will tell you that is pretty representative of the industry that I'm seeing. Usually utility expenses are higher than inflation because it's usually driven by power, chemicals, labor, etc. When you look at those items, cost items, coupled with your Delray purchases of wastewater treatment services, that accounts for 63% of your operating expenses. Just those 4 items alone is the majority of your expense. Other expenses, administrative costs, training, communications, etc., insurance, those type of things make up the rest. So, and that's pretty typical. When I look at the change in costs over the 5-year period, the need for rate increases, this accounts for about 25% of the need for rate increases over time. That's 5 years of inflation looking at the endpoints. Another driver for the need to adjust rates, click please, is was mentioned earlier was the phasing out of the debt service payments.
Excuse me, question?
Yes, sir.
Before we go through this slide on phasing out the debt, I just want to confirm, and especially not only for me, but for citizens who might be watching, because this is basic core to everything that you're trying to do, at least in the water and sewer world. A single-family home, you're saying, uses 25,000 gallons of water per year, correct?
No,
Per month.
no.
That's per month.
That is the average, that's the average. You have some customers using 5,000 gallons, you have some customers using 150,000 gallons. But if I take all the flow, all the billed water sales for that class of single-family residential, individually metered, and divide by the accounts and divide by 12, that's 25,000. But you have a range of use, and we'll show you a picture of that a little bit, how that kind of works.
Okay, but you're also saying it's per month. I just want to make sure.
Yes, sir.
And the single family, you know, I guess I'm trying to understand how you can learn that for single families. They are considered, you know, your EDUs. But your multifamily, which is basically condos in Highland Beach, you're saying it's 5,000 gallons a month. But is that for each unit in each condo?
Yes, sir.
And
Bring that over. Well,
how do you know that? You just divide the number of units into what the condo is using for total money, total water?
Yes, but can you bring that over? No, we're trying to bring over a model. By way of example, in 2019, what the town gave us was all the billing records for fiscal 19. And we looked at the billed flow for each class and the number of accounts served or units served. And you're absolutely right. If I take the metered water sales for all those multifamily customers you were describing a few minutes ago and divide by the units, not the meters, but the units, the 4,000 units, that equates to about 5,000 gallons a month per unit on average. And you know, some of those units could be vacant. Some of those units could be filled. Some of those units may have some irrigation water attached to it. But on average, it's 5,000 gallon per unit per month on an annualized basis.
So here's the crux of the problem, which is some condos have very large units that uses a whole lot more water than smaller condos with, you know, 1 or 2 people in the condo with 1 or 2 bedrooms max versus a 3-bedroom or greater, larger condo that can use easily double, triple some of the smaller condos. So there's no differentiation in the size of the condo or one condo complex versus another. It's basically adding them all in regardless, correct?
Right, your class of service, multifamily residential, all condos, they all have the same general characteristics. Residential units, they're master metered, they're defined as a residential living unit, et cetera. And you have that same phenomenon to some degree with individually metered single family homes. You know, one customer could, you know, not irrigate at all. I'm just going by example only. You know, they may use 5,000 and another one could be a 6-bedroom home, irrigates a lot and could be 105,000 gallons of water. But the class is single family residential, and that's how they're grouped. They're not differentiated by bedrooms, square footage. That'd be a very, very difficult rate to manage. But you are correct. The individual usage characteristics of a unit per se can be vastly different. Vastly different based on occupancy, you know, are they vacant or not? And also occupancy versus the number of people that are there and any other amenities that master metered customer may have. You are correct, there are differences.
Okay, so, and lastly, and I'm sorry to hit you so early in your presentation, but again,
You're fine.
Understand this, that everything else that follows will be, you know, structured that way. When we come to accounts, an account is a single family home, correct?
An account would be a customer. It would be a single family home. an account would be and Matt can come in and correct me if I'm wrong, an account would be a condominium association. I bill, give me an account, give me one.
The Ocean, I think.
I'll make it up, Ocean View Condo. You know, that's the account, but it may have 300 units, and we bill based on the units to try to get that so that each dwelling unit should pay the same rate. Are all considered as one dwelling unit, one account, one billing unit per se. But the account itself would be the master metered account, the the residential household, or maybe a commercial establishment. So you don't have very many of those.
Okay. And of course, the big difference, I think, will also be between condos and single-family homes. And I think we'll end up at some point later in the conversation, you know, irrigation, you know, watering the lawns and filling the pools and all that sort of thing. It's going to be, that's, I think, where we get into a, you know, a really distinction between single-family home and condo in terms of how to make this fair. Okay.
Right. You're on the right track. There's no doubt. And as you know, rate making is as much as an art as it is a science. So, I understand your questions, and as we move forward, I have a funny feeling these questions are going to come back again as we talk about rate design, which I am looking forward to as to try to solidify where we want to be on our utility system. So I appreciate the question. Very, very good.
Question
Okay.
also, please.
Yes, ma'am.
I wondered if you're including townhomes in the condo category, because we do have townhomes with 2, 3, or 4 units. Those are considered condos, even though they're not classified as such within our town codes and so forth.
Depends on the meter.
The categorization of a townhome would fall into the multifamily.
That was that's what I thought, but I'm confirming. Thank you.
All right, but wouldn't that be only if they have one main meter going in? If they each have a separate meter, wouldn't it be separate accounts?
I would think that would be correct. Go ahead, Matt.
I believe there is some instances like that, but not many.
Okay.
Good question, Evelyn. Thank you.
That is a very good question, and that is faced by a lot of utilities. A lot of times when you see single family, many would call that individually metered residential versus master metered or multifamily residential. That was a very, very good question. So back to, I'm going to turn back to slide 6 if I can, and back to the major drivers. This is probably one of the biggest items in the need for rate adjustment is the phasing out the general fund reimbursements of the debt payments. We did it over a 5-year period. By fiscal 2025, all the debt is programmed to be funded from water and sewer rates. This does promote a couple things: full cost of service from our customers. It also promotes the enterprise fund concept, where rates should fund the cost of service under financial reporting criteria. One thing we are recommending, if you could turn your eyes to the chart for a second, I know it's a little small. I want to go down the fiscal 2021 column. In that year, the first line says total debt service. That's about $1.549 million. What we are recommending is that currently you have on account roughly $2.2 million approximately in water connection charges. You know, these that were charged a new development to pay for capacity. This debt that you see here, a portion of it, a significant portion of it, is the funding of the RO, reverse osmosis water treatment plant expansion. That is a clear use of the available use of those funds. So we're recommending, let's go ahead and use those dollars. We have them because they are restricted to expansion-related expenditures. The debt is expansion-related expenditures. Let's start utilizing those funds and buy down that debt and help phase in the transfer or reimbursement from the general fund to zeros. So that's what line 2 is. I know it's a little confusing, but we're utilizing those funds to do that. Once we get the net available, then we back that down to 80, 60, 40, 20. And you can see the very last line, that is the amount of debt that's in the rates for that particular year. By way of example, in 2021, we've got around $490,000 of debt built into the rates, our revenue requirements I mentioned earlier. In the last year, it's $1.2 million. That's the end, and it's 100% of the debt. Now, you may wonder, well, gosh, Rob, I see 490, 780, 1.1, 1.1, then 1.2. If you go back up to the first line, we have a debt service reduction in 23, 24. One of your bonds matures and the debt drops. But the amount paid from the general fund, you highlight the 1058 stuff. Here, I'll do it.
No, she has control of it.
Oh, right there. They don't see it?
No, they have control of it.
Oh, they have control?
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah.
Okay, I thought you had control.
Uh,
Sorry. That, you can see that that's the amount that's paid from the general fund, and that's pretty linear over time. So that's the amount of dollars, that last line that's in the revenue requirements. This accounts for about 44% of the overall rate increase over the 5-year period. This is a pretty significant number. If you think about it, I mentioned earlier, revenue's about a little over $3 million. This change is 1.2 at the tail end of the forecast period. That's pretty significant. So, it's about 44% of the revenue requirements, rate increase.
What exactly is a water connection fee?
A water connection fee. Go ahead, Matt, you want to do it? Oh, you're muted. Matt, you're muted.
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, a water connection fee is a capital contribution that's made by developers or new growth to help pay for a portion of their cost of capacity that you've now allotted to them. By way of example, if I built a home and you give me 1 unit of capacity, let's say it's $3,000, it helps defray the cost of expansion being funded from existing ratepayers, and it goes to new development. However,
So that's a one-time fee?
yes, ma'am.
Yes.
And a lot of people call them impact fees, availability charges. But the issue with those fees, if this is a good question, they can only be used for expansion-related type expenditures. You can't pay salaries with it. You have to fund expansion costs. The RO plant expansion financing in that debt service is clearly an expansion cost. So we said, let's use these fees while we have them, while we still have principal on this debt outstanding, and pay it off type of thing. And that's what we're doing for the benefit of the system and the benefit of helping you move to a full cost recovery on the debt.
Okay.
Okay? Next, you're not running this? Next slide, please. Okay, the other major driver affecting this is your capital improvement plan. Currently, you got about a $6 million capital plan. I call it a CIP, capital improvement plan. That's basically primarily to fund, asset replacement. Something a little different here is we have a lot of wastewater collection system rehab work, about $3.4 million. And that's a pretty big number. It's about 55% of our total need. And this is what we built into the forecast for rate development. Next slide, please. The funding plan for that, as you can see here, we're assuming the issuance of additional debt to fund that the wastewater collection system. And also we have, you see an R&R fund there, an account there. What we've done in the rate study is we segregated cash and cash flow to have a separate capital fund for our rate calculations. So we know how much is reserves for working capital, rainy day fund, storm event type of issues, and then how much is for capital. And why we do that is the funding of capital replacement, I call it capital reinvestment, should be linear. Every year you should put $100,000 aside or something. Every year. You may spend it lumpy, but the funding should be linear. And so we have recommended that in the plan. We're targeting about 11% of the rate revenues. If you, and that's with rate increases, but by way of example, if we had $3.4 million of rate revenue, 11% of that would be about $350,000 to $400,000. To kind of give you a feel, it'll go up over time because we have rate increases. This constant or annual reinvestment is viewed very favorably by the credit rating agencies like Moody's and Standard & Poor's. It allows for flexibility in CIP planning because you're not issuing debt. You've got the ability to modify your plans as you move forward. And it also tries to minimize the issuance of future debt beyond this issue. And I think it's a good idea to do that because after we do this issue, although we're not debt burdened, we have a high amount of debt allocated to the system, and we'll need to start paying that off over time. So it's very important that we do this, and this is probably worth about 20 to 25% of the rate adjustment as well.
Does that affect the ability of the water enterprise to get their own loans as opposed to having to go to the town's general fund backed up by ad valorem taxes?
That is correct. The goal is, because this benefits the existing ratepayer, the assets are already there to serve them. So if I got to replace that meter, I've got to replace that pump, I have to replace that line, that transmission line. We'd use these funds in lieu of issuing debt to the extent possible. If you got a very big, capital program, if you have to replace the RO train, that's pretty big, you play as your debt. But the key is, use this fund for those capital and don't go to the general fund. Utilize this to fund those ongoing renewals and replacements. That's over time. It really is a good thing to do, and it also it makes you financially stronger from a credit standpoint and a overall sustainability of rate standpoint. So we would definitely recommend that. We recognize this in the analysis, and it actually would recommend you have a separate account if you need to. A lot of people could blend it with working capital. We like it separate so we can see how much is working cash and how much is capital cash, because the spending of capital can vary from year to year. So we've assumed that in the plan as well. Next slide, please. This is the driver, and the debt is tied to the CIP. I mentioned that $4 million. This is when you look at this graph, this is your existing and proposed debt. The blue is the existing. And remember when I was talking about the reimbursement of removing the general fund transfers? You can see that, and I said in 24 the debt dropped. You can see it right there, the blue. In 24 there's a drop off. In 25 more of a drop off. So you've got declining debt over time. So what we've done, we've tried that $4 million bond issue, we tried to wrap that payment around that. So you'll see the big red starts in 2025. We did that on purpose to allow the blue to drop so our debt stays fairly level for those next 5 years. That's called a wrap. We wrapped it around the existing debt. When it comes time for you to do this, we recommend you talk to your financial advisor to coordinate the sizing and timing and structure. But we've got benefit coming, and once we can get to 26, 27, you can see that your debt starts dropping. And what I'd recommend, if we can do, if we don't issue more debt in the future and we size rates at that 1.2 million line, point to 2025, if you would, at the very top, right there. if our rates are set there and the debt starts dropping later, we can fill that in with that renewal and replacement funding and try to not issue any debt in the future as much as possible. That would be a very financially healthy thing to have. We just got to get there. And so this is very positive what I see here, that the debt is dropping to give you a lot more flexibility 5 years from now type of thing. So it's very, very good. So, okay, next slide, please. This graph kind of shows you the sum of all those parts. Like, for example, the blue is the revenue requirements, operating expenses. The red is the debt service being funded, that's allocated to the system. The purple is, I guess that's purple or blue line there. That's your total revenues from rates and transfers and everything. And you're saying, gosh, that line is declining. What the heck? How can that happen? The reason why that's declining is the transfers to the general fund are going away. So we have less financial resources coming to the system, whether it's rates, transfers, or interest in income or whatnot. So the dotted line would be the amount of revenues we expect to receive with the rate increases. It slightly under recovers for those years, but in the last year we essentially break even, and we have cash to cover that. So that change between the blue line and the dotted line are proposed rate adjustments to fund all those expenditure requirements, those drivers I talked about earlier. And that's the plan. So when you look at that, if you go to the next slide, please, the rate adjustments are front-end loaded for several reasons. One is, the primary reason is we have a lot of debt starting off that we got to start paying. And so I looked at it from two ways. One, there's a price index allowance, an inflationary adjustment, I assumed at 2.5%, and then additional rate adjustments. Over time, I wanted to try to get us to inflation only to keep our revenue margins going. And water is a little lower than sewer. You can see the recommended revenue need for water is 15% in 2020. It drops to 12, then 6, and 2.5 over time, if you can point there. Sewer is slightly higher. Part of the reason for that, besides all the drivers, we have increased debt coming for them, allocated to them, that $4 million bond issue, and we've allocated that to the sewer. If you average the two together, because most of our customers are water and sewer customers, it's about an 18% increase in first year, then it drops about 12, then 6 and 2. So they're not insignificant. Again, the primary driver being we're taking the debt and we're bringing it into the system. That's half the increase, basically. Remember I said earlier, in that last year, 1.2 million debt now into the rates in 2025, and that's about 33%. If you look at those rate increases, you can see the first 2 years is about 30%. So you can kind of get a feel for how that is all, how the makeup of the adjustments are.
How can you be recommending only 2.5% in 2024? When you just showed us inflationary increases and cost increases that exceed that.
Right. What we have done is we tried to capture some of it up front, and don't forget your debt is dropping a little bit. So we have a reduction in debt service payments, and the goal is to try to get to inflation at the tail end. I'm hoping that if you can scroll back up to about page 8 or so, if you can you do that? Right there. Go back one. Go back down. There you go. As you can see, in 2025, there's a little bit more of a decline. What I'm trying to do is get rates pretty much established. So at that point in time, hopefully all you'll need in the next rate study is just inflation. So we got some benefit coming from the decline in debt service. So even though we're adding debt service to the system, the debt is dropping a little bit. So that's helping us, coupled with the fact that we got the inflation on the O&M expense. So the goal was...
I understand that, but you showed us that utilities generally have inflationary costs and operating costs that exceed that.
That's right. But the 2.5% is on all the rate, but, okay, go back, drop down on the slide, please. One more, down, the other way. Go like slide, that one right there. The 2.5% is applied to all the revenues. The O&M expenses generally increase about 3.1%, but we're applying the 2.5% to all the rates. So it's pretty much covering it. The O&M expense, oh gosh, I'm gonna guess here. Just give me 1 second. How much
I
is
have
the
to be
O&M?
missing something. If our costs
Mayor, I think,
are
it-
greater
and
than
they can clarify, but I think it's
2.5%.
because they're hitting you for 2.5% both coming and going. So they're
Yeah.
nailing you on the water coming into your house, 2.5 increase, and then also the water going out is a 2.5 increase, which at the moment, we don't have that revenue coming from water going out, if you will.
Well, we only charge for water once. And there's no, but the 3% on the O&M, keep in mind, your O&M is about 72% of your total expenses. That blue you see is 72% of the total expenses. We're applying the 2.5% to all the rate revenue, which includes R&R and debt, et cetera. So 2.5%, by way of example, 2.5% on $100 of revenue equals, 3% on $80 of expense. If you get the math, so to speak. So the 2.5% we think is sufficient. We're trying to keep the rates as low as we can, recognizing these cost changes, and we think the 2.5% is adequate at that point in time. We can make it a little higher, but I just felt like, go to the next slide, please.
Can you also just define what you mean, what's included in inflation? Again, I know you referenced just because it's such a
It'd be
big-
the
Wait a minute, slow down, please. Can we go back to what Greg was just saying? Greg, would you repeat that?
Mayor, what I was saying is currently, under our rate structure, we charge for flow, we charge a fixed amount and flow for water coming into the house, but we only charge a fixed amount for water going out to wastewater. It's a flat part.
Oh,
Right.
In their new proposal, though, they've got variable charge for both in and out.
that's
Correct.
correct.
So that's additional revenue that scales up as well when they have a percentage increase. Because in the current rate structure that we have, you have a percentage increase in fees. It's only going on water coming into the house, not water going out of the house.
Right,
Where
so it's only a
what they're
partial
proposing
gain.
has increases, as you increase rates by 2.5%, you're increasing both the fee for water coming in and water going out. That was my,
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
We can address that when we get there. It's a little different than that, and I can try to explain that. Vice Mayor, I think that's who was talking, if I can tell right.
it was, you don't have to do it now. We can do it later. I just.
Yeah, no, your point, I didn't understand the in and out part before, but you are correct. There is now a variable charge. If you go the alternative route, you are correct that there's a variable charge for the wastewater leaving the system, so to speak, going to Delray. That is absolutely correct. We've tried to adjust for that, and I'll try to show you that when we get there.
Okay,
The
we have to belabor the
inflation is your basket of goods. It's the annual cost on the cost of providing services. It could be insurance and whatnot. It's just general inflation on the cost of providing service. We know it's going to, labor increases to your personnel, for example. That's in that inflation type adjustment, and we call it inflation. To give you an idea what's in those numbers.
Okay, I understand it, Rob. We don't have to belabor the 2.5 at this point. I just
I was
think
trying to answer.
margins
Okay.
are a little thin, so we'll deal with that at a later date. Well, let's-
Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, we're gonna switch gears a little bit, and we're gonna talk about rates. And I expect, please interrupt me as we move forward, because I know this is gonna be a little confusing. What I want to do first is show you your existing rates. This is what's in effect today. Water has a flat charge per unit. A single family is 1 unit. The multifamily is based on the number of units behind that meter we talked about earlier. They all pay the same. Commercial pays the same rate as well. And then you currently have an inverted block rate structure for all your customers. Inverted block means you have an inclining or increasing rate. If you look at 0 to 19, 19 to 49, and above 49, you can see as you hit to each tier, as they called it, the rate goes up. Multifamily has a similar structure, but I do want to point out it has different rates and levels in terms of the ERC or unit use.
So what was the rationale for a multifamily to go from that first tier of 19,000 gallons to 13,000 gallons?
Change that. First of all, I need to change something here. That 1418 on multifamily should be $2.90. If we could change that, I would greatly appreciate it. If it's possible to. I don't know if it's possible to or not. That 1418 and on the multifamily should be 2.5, the typo. So I apologize. Now, what was your question? I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. I was looking at the rate.
What was the rationale, do you think, for in the first tier single family, it went from 19,000 to multifamily 13,000 gallons? It's not like they cut it in half. I mean, what do you think?
That's a really question, and I even questioned the second block as well, where it's 290. I don't know the answer. I can kind of guess. This was well before us when this happened, or the structure was introduced. Generally, multifamily has a lower demand per unit than single family, but to me personally, we want to change this relationship because, by way of example, if you charge everybody the same flat charge, that means each unit has the same allocated capacity per se. It's okay. And so we believe that if you're going to charge everybody the same rate per unit, which is what you're doing, we think the multifamily should be adjusted to the same blocks as single family. And the by the way, the 290 rate, if you look at 13 through 23,000, please visualize $2.90 there, because that's the rate, that's a typo. Single family is $4.18 for the second block. Multifamily is $2.90 for the second block. We don't understand that. Nope, wrong one. It's multifamily. Make that 4 and go down to the 418 below it. 290, there you go. I appreciate that. 290. So when you look at that, why do they get a break and a lower flow level? So we are recommending that be adjusted when we go to our rate design. I think the Vice Mayor made a very good point. Wastewater, flat charge only, no flow charge. And that's your current rate as we have today. So we have 2 alternatives for you. Next slide, please.
I should say that in the report that we were given on the water and wastewater system study, that new edited price was not in here. So I was going on the 418.
No, it's 290.
Anyway, so we're focusing on the new, so it doesn't really matter.
Yep.
Yeah,
all right.
we'll see. That's not there. That's the units. He's talking about we've called up the rate model, rate study draft as well. So we've changed the rates a little bit too. We'll get to there as well. Anyway, so one thing I wanted to show you, we talked about this average use per customer. This is per month again, so please recognize this is per month. No, it's 290,
Wow.
okay. And if you look at the flows that are currently being billed, and this is from your billing data, about 20, I'm gonna talk about residential first. In block one, about 26% of the total billed gallons, is billed in that first block, that $2.41 rate. The second block that goes to 49,000, about 27% of the flow, total flow, annual flow is there, and the remainder is above 49,000 gallons. There's a lot of flow in that third block. You look at multifamily, 89%, almost 90% is in the 0 to 13,000 gallons per dwelling unit. That's why the flow is so less at 5,000 gallons. I'm not surprised at this. You've got a lot of condominium units, and this is what we normally see. They don't get out of the first block. There's so many units behind that meter, if you got 20 units, let's say, just as an example, 5 could be vacant and 15 could be occupied. That really drives down that average use per dwelling unit, you can imagine.
Well, in some condos, you could have half of the condo complex is empty because of season.
That's exactly right. You are exactly right. That's why I think that is less. I totally agree with you. And that's what we're seeing. If you can go back, go to the next slide, please. I think this is, so let's get back to water again, because I want to get back to that point you just made, Commissioner. That was an excellent observation. And that's why we want to keep that flat charge at where you are today and raise it on average for the rate increase. Because if you think about it, that's the allocated demand and that account is vacant, that unit's vacant, you still got the infrastructure there. You still built the water plant. You got the RO train sitting there. You got the pipes sitting there. And that flat charge helps recover that. Now, you can see the rates again. There's the 2020 rates. 0 to 19, 49, above 49, and again, multifamily with the corrected 290 sitting there. Now, the two structures are this. One is, Rob, there's just too much to do. The rate increases are too high. We're going to stick with the same structure. What I would recommend that if you do that, you make multifamily the same as residential and commercial per unit. Everybody pays the same thing, number one. I wouldn't have a 290. Why should multifamily in the second block pay $1.30 or $1.20 less than single family and commercial? They shouldn't. I don't think they should. So we would recommend that you first consolidate the rates to a single rate, and that you make the blocks 0 to 20, 20 to add 1,000 gallons to it. Round them out that's for another reason. But go 0 to 20 and then keep that structure. If you want to do the alternative, which includes a sewer flow charge, we recommend that you collapse the blocks a little bit, 0 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60 and above. That links to more of an indoor use, discretionary use, excessive use type concept, which the water management districts like to see. That also helps us in the pricing of sewer if you go volumetric. We thought it'd be a good idea, keep the flat charge where it is, keep the first block about where it is under the uniform application. And by the way, I didn't say that. In that keep the same structure. If we needed 15%, the rates went up 15%. Under the alternative, they're slightly different. Now, how do we price these? We got various ways to price the blocks, looking at base charge recovery and whatnot, but we recommend that you scale back down the blocks a little bit and then have a larger tail end block for those higher end users that are demanding more capacity.
So
now,
you're saying, or it appears to be, so far in your presentation, and I'm kind of cutting into it, that the equivalent dwelling unit of a condo might be paying a reasonable fee. The single family homes are really underpaying given their much higher use and against any kind of conservation intentions that we may want as a town or in support of what the county and state wants in the way of conservation, correct?
Well, the state wants conservation, there's no doubt about it, and I talked to some engineers who do a lot of consumptive use permitting, and they're actually saying that the staff at this water management district is impressing on increasing the prices for conservation. They have general objectives, they don't have a policy that you must be here. Southwest Florida Water Management District has much more stringent guidelines. They want per capita use at 110 gallons per capita, which we're higher than that. But back to your other question about multifamily, when you compare the blocks, it appears to me the multifamily rates are lower than residential just by looking at the second block at 13 to 23. They're only paying $290, yet I'll use you, Commissioner, as an example. You're a single family, you're paying $4.18 if you hit the second block. That's a $1.20 difference or $1.30 difference. There should be no reason for that. If you're going to treat everybody the same flat charge per unit, same capacity allocation as I look at that, then everybody should pay the same rate. So we are recommending that the multifamily blocks be the same as residential commercial, and everybody pays the same. If you stick with the structure you pretty much have today, I would just eliminate the multifamily class and make them the same. If you do the alternative, we recommend a little bit more of a conservation type approach, and the reason for that really goes to the next slide. If you can go to the next slide, which is wastewater, because we got to look at the two together. Currently, for wastewater, you have a flat charge of $40.43. If you keep the same structure, it goes to $55. But if you go to a volumetric rate, it's very different. And you see the flat charge drops to $28.50. And the reason for that is I've now got a usage charge sitting there, which I didn't have before. So I can't keep the same flat charge. I'd over-recover drastically. So that $2.60 rate you see there recovers the costs between that you would have gotten between the $55 and the $28. That what is it, $27 or so? That's now in the flow charge. And I know you're all thinking, saying, well, gosh, if I'm a low-end user, I'm getting a big break. Well, yeah, if you use zero in your single family, you're getting a $20 decrease. But what we also have said, I'm not sure who said it, it may have been the vice mayor, I think, about the outflows. And someone mentioned about sewer and irrigation. We are recommending right now that the residential service, both multifamily and single family, have a 20,000 gallon cap every 2 months. And the reason for that is if you're irrigating, that's not going to the sewer system. So most utilities do have a cap, so we pick 20,000 gallons bi-monthly. Well, if you think about the water rate, if I had my first block, if you go back up a slide, or go back up one right there, you see that alternative structure for water, the first block, 0 to 20. Why did I pick that? 10,000 gallons is representative essentially of indoor use, sewer use, all the same. So I wanted the first block for what they call essential use, indoor use, cooking, bathing, those type of things. They match each other. Then after that, the sewer for residential, if you go back down the next block, it's capped. There's no longer any sewer charges but after that 20,000 gallon bi-monthly. If you're commercial, you pay. So that's how that works. Now, we can show you some graphs to show you how this all works together. It's a little confusing, but let's go to the graphs. This is the bi-monthly use, so there's a lot on this graph. So let me explain to you the graphs first so you know what you're looking at. Is the blue line is the existing rates today. Right, that blue line is the existing rates, with the line being the bill over time based on the flows at the bottom. So where the cursor is right now, at the very end of that blue line, that's the bill at 100,000 gallons per every 2 months. They pay about a little under $500, $467. The red line is, if I take the blue line and increase all the rates equally, that was alternative one. And you can see it's a little lower, a little higher, but as you can see right there, the green line, which is the alternative, has gone above the red line, and that's the conservation rates going thereafter. The orange mountain you see there is the amount of bills rendered at those flows. Because one of the questions I thought you may ask me, well gosh, at 50% of my bill, my accounts, this is only single family, if you go to the right there, the 50%, right there, and just go straight across, right about there, 50% of your bills are used about 64,000 gallons an average at 50%. The average is 50,000 gallons, but so that kind of gives you a feel. The proposed rates at over the 100,000 gallons are fairly close to each other. There's some winners and some losers, but as you go to 200,000 gallons, you're going to see that green line go higher than the red line. So that kind of gives you an idea. At 100,000 gallons, if you look at that peach color mountain again at 100,000 gallons, about 85% of your customers have received a bill. 85% of your customers use 100,000 gallons or less for every 2 months. Kind of give you a feel what I'm trying to say there. So that kind of gives you that. If you look at wastewater, which I think is the next graph, this is very, very different. Same customer curve, but if you look at the blue line, right now you charge $44 flat, no flow. If I just increase it uniformly, that's the red line right there. But if we do a volumetric rate, the base charge drops, and about 11,000 gallons per bi-monthly period is a crossover. If I use 11,000 or less, I get a benefit. If I use 11,000 or more, I pay more. And you can see as it goes up, when it hits 20,000 gallons for residential, it caps. No more sewer flow charges. This shifts the cost burden to the higher customers use and contribute indoor use for sewer, to the benefit of those using lower flows. This is contributory. If I use more, I'm paying for more.
Question, how do you know how much they use indoor as opposed to outdoor?
That's why that's a very good question. And that's why we picked 10,000 gallons, because I do know based on my research, indoor use per capita ranges from 55 gallons to 75 gallons per capita per day. And if I've got 3 people in a household of 75 gallons per day times 30 days, that's about 6,000 gallons a month. I will tell you, 75 gallons per capita is pretty high with low flow fixtures, washing machines that don't use much water anymore. It's probably closer to the 55 to 60. Based on my experience, a 10,000 gallon minimum is very reasonable. Many utilities use a 10,000 gallon cap or less. And so we equated that to indoor use by way of industry averages and industry guidelines.
Okay,
And so that's how we did that. So if you think about it all, I've got to recover dollars from the higher end users with this, but this shifts the dollars from low end users to higher end users because you have a flow charge. Now, if you go to the next slide, I think it's a combo. That adds the two together in the curves. You can see the curves. There's not much change until you get about the 65, 68,000, and you can see the green line starting to go higher. This is a single family water and wastewater combined. You can see right about there, it starts going up. That's conservation. That's been the effect of the wastewater, et cetera. And we do that. Why you see more and more in residential? Because multifamily under the same blocks, most of their flows in the first block. So they are at the lower end. So let me go to the next slide and some advantages. Here's multifamily. Forgot, sorry. This is a very strange looking graph. Actually, I questioned Mark when he put together. This again, this is water and wastewater, blue, red, and green again. You can see that the multifamily gets a pretty big decrease up to about 10,000 gallons or so. That green line. However, if you look at the peach, which is a very strange looking graph, there's hardly any units down there. And if you think about that, it's very rare you have almost all your units vacant and there's no flow. There's always some occupancy, there's always some irrigation, because this is all the accounts commingled. If I'm that Ocean View condo again with 3 meters, this is the sum of the 3 meters. There's not very many units that use 0, 2, or 4, 6 1,000 gallons in totality. The average may be 5, but it doesn't quite follow that. However, when you get to that 20,000 gallon range, you're at 80, 90%, which we expected. So that kind of gives you that. I know this is very confusing. Again, at 40,000 gallons, which ends up 98% of the bills rendered, the units use 40,000 gallons or less. So it's quite a bit. Much more condensed flow. With that, if we can go to the next graph, I think and this is commercial, same thing. Commercial, they have a lot of impact. They're underpaying, and we had a much bigger increase for them there, for those guys. So but you have only 2 or 3, not very many. And so next slide, please. Let's talk about advantages and disadvantages. This is very complicated. And I know I've gone very, very confusing. Let's talk about the current rate structure. Some of the advantages you have right now. You know, it promotes rate stability. And what rate stability means is the predictability of your revenues. If you think about it, you have a fairly good flat charge for water, but wastewater is 100% flat. All your wastewater revenues there's no flow in them. They don't vary. You know you're probably going to get those. So that's called rate or revenue stability. It's high predictability. Your customers are used to the structure. You've been under the structure for a long, long time. So they're used to it. And if you apply the rate adjustments uniformly, everybody pays the same percentage rate increase. If I use $10 of cost and it goes up 20%, I'm paying 12. If I use 20 and it goes up 20%, I'm paying $24. Although the dollar differences are there, the percent is the same. So everybody pays the same percent. The disadvantages to me are that the single family and the multifamily rates aren't consistent. Those block differences we talked earlier, the rate differences we talked earlier, they're different. I don't think they should be. Flat sewer customers, and one reason why you want us to look at it, those that use a little low flows that are not contributing to the sewer are paying for it.
Mr. Rumlin.
Finally, Finally, when your largest expense in sewer is your purchases from Delray Beach. It's I think for the test year, it's like $900,000. It's a volumetric based rate only. It's not fixed. It's based on flow. And if you think about it, your costs are based on fixed, so it doesn't follow the cost to purchase wastewater if that's a criteria to use. So those are the disadvantages. When you look at that alternative, I think it approaches equitability. All customers paid the same. For wastewater, they pay in relation to flow contribution, which is something that you all have been considering for many years. I think that's important. It does provide a stronger water conservation signal only to those excessive use customers over 70,000 gallons, which I think the water management districts, as they're looking at consumptive use permits, are putting a stronger eye on based on my conversations today with planners and engineers. And the water rate blocks are more linked to levels of service at 350 gallons per day, which was the standard level of service used by the Florida Public Service Commission, used by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, and the setting of rates. And sewer is linked to essential use only indoor. Disadvantages. If you go to the alternative rate structure, as you saw in those curves and whatnot, when you change rates, there's always winners and there's losers. It'll shift some of the costs to certain customers. Those that have very high use will see a higher rate increase than those with lower use. So that's something to think about. There is some revenue stability reduction. Obviously, in sewer, you're implementing a flow charge. So those flow amounts can change, right? And that could produce a little bit less stability or predictability on your rates. Customers are not familiar with the rate structure. There could be changes, there may be questions. And it's really, to me, mostly on the wastewater side. Although there's some concern about the water side, you have a conservation type structure today, slightly different, but you do have one today. But when you implement the wastewater side, you know, I can see some questions. So those are some of the disadvantages of the alternative rate structure. So to give you out some thoughts, some questions on. But I figured you may want to see this and come back to this at the end. Next slide, please. This would be the rates under.
Highlight that. I can't understand the words you say.
Oh, can you not hear me?
No, we got it. Go ahead.
Okay. Excuse me. This is just a slide that shows you the water and wastewater rates under each alternative to consider. I won't spend a lot of time on this, except we adjust the rates for the alternative in 21 and then adjust uniformly thereafter based on the rate. But the next slide, I think, is the rate comparison. I don't know is that right? Yes. Based on the proposed rates, this is the rates in effect as of today for all these communities in Palm Beach County and several in Broward County as well. The blue, as you see on this chart, is the water rate, and the reddish color is the sewer rate. If you look at the slide, your existing Highland Beach rates, about 5 from the left, that's where you are today bi-monthly. This is for every 2 months, right? So it should be 50,000 gallons. So it's 50.
It's monthly.
No, it's monthly. It's not
Is this monthly? It's monthly? I'm sorry. Okay, it is monthly. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was and I got confused.
Yeah.
Sorry. This is monthly. You're right. And we did monthly because all these other utilities pretty much bill monthly. If you look at the alternative structure, we didn't do the existing current change. The alternative structure, you'll see about 156.17. You're well below the average of 193 at 25,000 gallons of use. We picked this because this is your standard residential water use. I also looked at if I raise the rates to the 2025 level, there's several utilities today that are still lower than where you would be at the 2025 level. So I thought that was good. But your rates are competitive right now. I do know that we still have more rate phasing to do relative to the recovery of the revenue requirements, i.e. primarily the debt service recovery from rates. But you look very attractive at that usage level compared to the other utilities. So I was real happy to see that.
Rob,
Next.
okay, this 156, is it?
Yes, sir.
That is the combined rate recommended for the first increase?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. And the reason why I don't show them all, I mean, I could.
Nah, not necessary.
Yeah, I don't know what the other utilities are doing, but I do know the town of Jupiter's raising their rates 3% a year every year. The Questa's got a rate study, and I think they're going to 6% a year next 5 years. Wellington, I think, has 4%ers the next couple years. West Palm, 4%. Manalapan will be needing a rate increase because they're losing half their service territory. So I know they're rising. I don't know what they all are, so I don't show it.
No, well, this still puts us significantly under the average.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, Mayor. Over time, you're probably going to shift a little more to the right. I'm not going to say you're not, but you're not going to be where Dania Beach is right now. You'll even at 2025, you're not going to be way over there.
Yeah.
Which I would.
We're good.
So,
Thank you.
okay. And I think next slide, I think it's just the results of the rate adjustment plan. It allows you to the fully capital plan, including the piping rehabilitation for your wastewater collection system. It provides you still, you're a favorable credit whether you issue GO bonds for it, which is highly favorable, or if you do utility debt, you're getting to a stronger position as your separate enterprise fund. We begin that debt repayment transfer, as you all know, and again, we promote a stronger fiscal position. We're increasing revenue margins. We're starting that R&R capital funding plan. We've still got good cash liquidity or cash balances, and we're still competitive in rates in 2021, although you've done a lot of movement in your revenue requirements. Next slide, please. So with that, we would consider preparation of rate resolution to adopt up to the 5-year plan. We think the alternative rate structure is fair and reasonable if that's the direction you want to go. I know it's a lot of change, but either one will, either structure will recover all your costs. But I think the alternative structure is a little bit more equitable to your customers. But no matter what we do, we got to still continue to monitor the financial rate position and plan accordingly. Especially if we change the alternative, there will be some reaction, I think, to it as we move forward. And that, I think, concludes our presentation. And I know you probably have a lot of questions, so whenever you're ready.
Okay, first of all, great presentation, thank you. And it opens up a large number of questions. So maybe we should take this in some kind of order. John, why don't we start with you?
Well, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the summary at the end where we're fully funding our capital improvement. It will support a favorable credit for the town, credit rating. And most important to me is transferring the debt to the rightful enterprise rather than from the general fund. We've got to do that. It affects our fiscal position. Now, I'm still unclear and would like to have commentary about what is fair. Is it really fair to have one price for everybody? Is it fair that it seems homes are at a much higher usage rate than EDUs, condo units? Can you reconcile that for me?
I'll try to. In terms of water pricing, but let me just give you a little tiny bit of history on some rates and where we are today. Many, many years ago, back when I probably had dark hair, you saw a lot of what's called declining block rates. And what that meant was, I'm going to do it by way of example, Commissioner. The first block was $1. Once you hit a certain tier, it dropped to 80 cents or 70 cents. Why did that happen? Well, once you recovered all your fixed costs, all that's left over is variable, right? The chemicals and power and sludge disposal. And that's what you saw in rates. It then became, the industry went to uniform rates over time, which is your question. Everybody pays the same. The water management districts, for the consumptive use permitting, to get a consumptive use permitting, they're going to demand a conservation block rate structure. I will tell you right now, the city of Sunrise, their first block monthly, I believe, is 0 to 30,000 gallons, if I'm not mistaken. And they are right now have a permit condition that they have to reduce that more of a typical indoor discretionary excessive use block. They're being mandated to do this. They'll pick their block. Don't misunderstand me. They'll pick it, but they're demanding that. So you could charge a uniform rate per customer. I'm not sure the water management district's going to like that, knowing that your average use for residential is 25,000 gallons. That's a fairly high per capita use. But moving toward the volumetric rate sewer does provide a conservation incentive as well.
Well, I totally accept and support a conservation strategy for our water usage. No question about that in my mind anyway. I think if anything,
okay.
What I'm thinking is, who are the major users on a per unit basis? It seems that it's the single family home, and that the condos are not, because for them, half the year their condos are empty, or maybe half their condos are empty for at least 4 to 6 months. So
Right.
their usage is going to be way down. Yet it doesn't seem that they're getting as much of a break as the single family units are. And again, I'm not sure I understand it. Maybe I'm completely wrong. So if we were to have conservation effort, it should hit the single family home more than anyone. No?
Well, at first blush, you would think that. One of the things we did do in the rate structure is we expanded the first block for multifamily from 0 to 13 to 0 to 20 to make it consistent, because each unit in the condo is considered as one living unit, just like single family is one unit. So you have consistency there. So we've added some flow in that first tier. If you go hit the second tier, remember, I'm going by memory. Can you call up this presentation, please? If you look at that first tier for multifamily, 89% of the flow is at 13,000 gallons or less per month. So although we've expanded the first tier, in reality, not very many are getting past it. However, if you are getting past it, why should you get a major break when compared to your neighbors next to you in the single family? And that was our concern.
Yeah.
And we said, if you're going to hide, yeah.
They should get a break.
I'm sorry?
There's no way they should get a break. I agree with you.
Yeah, and we thought the same thing, Commissioner, and that's why we made that secondary adjustment. And I really do like rate consistency among your classes if you price it that way, and that's how you price it. And I think rate consistency is good. If you use the same water per unit, you're gonna pay the same rate, the same bill. Everybody pays the same. If you're 2 units of use and I'm 1 unit, you're exactly twice my bill. I have no problem with that. It's your, as you as a user, that's your discretion. So I like that.
Okay, my next question really speaks to this concept of, and my last question, I'll let the others take over because I don't want this to go on forever. If we have the total water going into all of our residences, and we know also the total flow out, right? We have a percentage. What percentage of our total water that we're produced is being returned in the way of sewage?
I'm not sure, but I could probably say I can do an estimate of it. If you would take the 10, go to your, hang on 1 second. Add the first block, about 60% of the first block of multifamily, the first block of residential 10, and all commercial, tell me what you get. We're gonna try to calculate something for you. It's an estimate. We think roughly, say 50–60% of the multifamilies return to the sewer, maybe a little higher. The first block for residential, we're gonna add the first block for everybody in general service to town. That's it. No,
I was thinking 2/3 anyway, but.
Yeah, we got roughly of the total. I'm gonna guess 50% roughly. We're saying about 70%. I will tell you, go to Delray. Hold on a second. Sorry. The amount of sewer you're sending to Delray, based on their meter, is about 250 million gallons. Or I like to use 1,000 gallons, 250,000 gallons. When I look at the flows in the first block for residential, the first block for multifamily, and all of commercial, which generally usually is returned, that's about 267,000, very close to the 250. So I would say probably 70%, 65% of your water is indoor, and the remainder would be irrigation.
Exactly. Okay, that's what I was trying to confirm. Because the irrigation is primarily, I think, a single-family home versus units. Am I wrong?
Yeah, you're right. Condos use a lot, but they don't get charged a lot because it's divided by the number of EDUs in the condo. So hypothetically, your building has 100 units in it. So for all of the irrigation work that's done for your lawns and for all the shrubbery and trees, et cetera, that gets divided by the 100 units. For the single family home, it gets divided by 1. So therefore, they get charged a lot for it. But you're using a good amount of water for irrigation just for your building.
But I would say that the amount of area being irrigated is not that much more than your average home. Okay, 1.5 times as much.
Yeah, so.
But anyways, I was just asking, what's been your experience in general with of irrigation condo versus single family home?
Average pervious surface for a unit. I'm sorry, you asked me a question?
Yeah, so what has been your experience in terms of usage of irrigation, single family versus condo unit?
What my experience has been, what I've seen is that the condominium unit, and I agree with the mayor, the condominium unit is less irrigation per unit than single family. The amount of pervious surface, green grass, in a single family as 1 unit compared to the green grass at the condo divided by all the units, it's much less, usually 20, 30, 40%. And thereby, on a per unit basis, the residential customer has a higher irrigation demand, assuming the same application rate of water to the turf. In other words, if I put an inch of water down on a single family and I've 50% more pervious surface than the condo, I have a higher irrigation demand. Higher irrigation, so yes, that's what we've kind of seen. It really depends on the size, the number of units, and the size of the property. But that's what we've seen too, that the average is less.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Just before we move on, just so everybody realizes, there's a second shot at this that the Financial Advisory Board will be taking next week. So we'll be able to watch that. And then we meet again on this. So we've got plenty of time to go through this, okay?
And also, I have a request for you guys too, is if you have questions after today's meeting, before your next meeting together, go to Marshall or Matt and get them to us, and we can answer any questions. Because I know you walk by like, gosh, why didn't I ask that? Let us know. We'll try to help you any way we can.
Will do. Thank you. Okay, let's.
I just was going to reinforce your point that I know some people in the town, at least from the feedback I'm getting, are all excited, anxious about us making a decision like tomorrow, and it's going to change their world and their costs are going to go up and all of this. I think it's fair to say that we're taking a very deliberate, disciplined approach to get the input from an outside source and then evaluating it, having the numbers reviewed by our planning and financial boards, and that.
Yeah, we're definitely walking, not running. Also, Mark was sending a first-class note out to the population, inviting them to watch the video and walking them through how to get to the video on the website, so that if they have any questions or comments, they can send them in as well.
Excellent.
So we're inviting participation from the residents as well.
Okay, great. That's excellent.
Let's move on. Peggy, do you want to take it on?
Sure. First of all, I think we need to reinforce that regardless of where we single commissioners live or the financial board members live, we will make a decision that will be most fair to the most amount of people.
Absolutely.
So I want to state that up front. I'm not going to go in there and fight for just homes because I live in a home. I think we all have to make the most equitable decision of all. Secondly, I'd like to go back to the towns, if I could, Rob, in the study. I have a couple questions on that. The town of Gulf, for example, has even rates across the board. I looked it up there. It's a little town just south of, just south of Boynton Beach. It's a little pocket.
You talking about the Village of Gulf?
Yes, sir. Village of Gulf, line 10.
You know
It's
what their population is, Peg?
275 people.
Right.
So the reason I'm saying is we can't really compare, but it's nice. I understand that I looked it up. And then I did want to refer to, for example, here, Hillsborough Beach. We're in a very similar position in terms of different demographics as Hillsborough Beach. So that's nice to compare to Manalapan being a coastal community just up the street. But I did notice in this whole chart that the jumps in the tiers from 10,000 to 15 and then 15 to 30 are sort of all over the board. And I don't see that our higher jumps are as low as they could be compared to others, except for that last jump. And it would just be interesting to see why that would be, Rob. For example, where our jumps compare to Wellington, Coral Springs, Palm Springs, Seacoast, which is Palm Beach Gardens, Tamarack, those are all way larger towns and cities and villages.
I'm not sure I'm quite understanding your question.
Sure. The jumps in the range from 10,000 to 15,000 gallons and the 15,000 gallons
okay.
to 30, we're sort of in line with these much larger municipalities. And I wondered why that is in those higher jumps.
I'm not sure completely why, you're much more in line with them. I thought the same thing. You know, I guess the block differences are pretty much the same. I really don't know why you're in line. We just showed the comparison. I'm trying to think of, Mark's trying to show me the thing, and I can't.
Yeah, I just
Hold on a
couldn't
second.
quantify it.
No, I don't want to see that. She's talking about the bills themselves, not the gallons.
Oh, she got talking
Yes,
about the
she.
blocks. Oh, some.
Yeah. Hold
Just
on a
trying to
second. Hold on.
compare where we lie, yeah.
Yeah, I think one guess I could think is that, you know, you're more similar at those larger uses. They're all catching up to you. If I look at the lower levels, you're a little higher. Slide down, please. This water and wastewater? Let me go to water and wastewater.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the rate comparison on another screen here.
Yep.
You're at 66, that's 6,000 gallons. What's the average? Average down below, 71. You know, that's a good question. Part of the reason may be too, is your average use per customer, that 25,000 gallons for, single family is pretty high.
Right.
You know, Alpan has that. I will tell you, West Palm is 8,000 gallons. Jupiter, town of Jupiter is around 10 to 11,000. Boca is really high. I think it's around 20 to 30,000 gallons a month on average.
Huh.
And if you look at those, so you got a better unit cost there, considering everything. But I don't know. I really just don't know the reason why it'd be, because there's so many reasons why rates are different. You know,
Okay,
capacity, densities, everything. I will
Right.
tell you, back to the Village of Golf real quick, their rates, I think they had a pretty major sewer break the other day.
oh,
And, what?
I didn't hear about that one, okay.
Something like that, and, they're talking about raising rates, and they're commissioning a rate study right now to raise their rates as well, so we know that was going up too. Can't tell you what it is, but yeah, they got that renewal replacement we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
They've got those issues.
Okay. Okay, another question, the commercial accounts, what are they exactly? I mean, we have Delray Sands, but what else falls in that category?
Church.
The church, City Hall,
Yeah, City Hall.
Do we
or
pay,
town.
do we
town
charge
hall.
ourselves for water here at City Hall?
What?
We
I'm
pay
sorry?
for water at City Hall.
I think you do. I'm not sure you should.
Yep.
Enterprise fund, we should.
Okay.
So everybody
I believe
charges
that-
them.
It's also the new casino that's coming in.
Oh, thank you.
Golden City Casino?
There, yeah, the Golden City Restaurant Floating Casino. Okay, then.
Make sure they're higher. We may put it at a fifth block to get them.
Yep, yep. Okay.
Um,
Mhm.
He's trying to see what else is there. There was a church, I
I
remember
believe-
that.
There were 5 listed. I just couldn't
Maybe
come up.
the
with-
library?
Library, yeah.
Properties and the rest is just.
Most of it's Highland Beach stuff.
It just says Town of Highland Beach. I don't
Yeah,
have
it says
that.
Town of Highland Beach. We're looking at the customer name. That's all we have. And most
Okay, I
of it,
understand.
Island.
Just I couldn't figure out if we had commercial
St.
places.
Lucie
we weren't
Church.
aware. Yep,
And that's-
okay,
and those are the only-
That's it.
And it just says Town of Highland Beach, which I.
Just basically non-residential.
Right.
yep.
Right.
Okay,
Commissioner Gossett, are you
Yes.
trying to ask the basic question, which is, in the one case that we have a real commercial business, Delray Sands, should we be charging them a completely different, using a different rate structure?
this is a good leading question, yes. Thank you.
We kept the same structure you have. I think you charge them based on a certain number of units, if I remember right. And they got 118, I think, units. I'm not sure how they were developed, but we kept that. They're not billed by meter size. They're based on a unit count that's there, some sort of meter equivalent or demand account, and we've kept that. And the only other way I've seen a lot of people charge commercial, they do it based on a meter size, and then bill either you have a tiered rate or you don't. But by doing it based on units, then we can keep the same tier structure to everybody else.
Right.
And so I thought that consistency would be good, and they're used to that right now, that structure now. So we thought that would probably be a good structure to maintain. But
Okay.
there are.
Anything else, Peg?
Yeah, a couple things,
Okay.
if possible here. I wanted to ask Rob,
Yes, ma'am.
our sewer lines, you know, running to Delray Beach, part of their agreement with the state and the feds with the outfall pipe into the ocean of sewage was that they would utilize the reclaimed water system, which, as we know, has been in the news for having been a failed system. In 5 years, that outfall pipe is by 2025 supposed to be shut down. And would you just project how that would affect our rates in 5 years? Are we going to be double, tripled by Delray Beach based on their having to restructure their outfall pipe somewhere else?
That's a incredibly good question. As I understand it, with the outfalls, that they are technically supposed to be shut down, but are available for major wet weather discharge. So if we have a hurricane, 100-year storm event, I believe they can still use the outfall, but in reality, they're no longer being used, so to speak. That'll help. The question becomes the alternative. They're supposed to use reuse, and there's a couple ways to do that. You know, one obviously is physical reuse, but two is I know we're dealing with Sunrise and Cooper City and others what's the word I want to say? It's like carbon credits. I'll give you the reuse. I'll do it myself using my flow, and you get credit for it, so to speak.
Sure.
But that's not cheap either. It depends on how they price the reuse, whether it's all water, wastewater, or they give it part of it a water resource benefit. That will increase costs over time. There's no doubt in my mind that it will. And because unless they change the rules and get away from reuse, to install reuse down south where you all are at is very expensive. There's a lot of reuse customers down there, like a lot of golf courses and large green areas, as I recall. And the running lines is expensive, and that'll be in the rate. How they bill that rate, because we argued that, just so you know, St. Petersburg did this, and we serve a small system just like yours, St. Pete Beach, and they tried to bill us for all these costs of reclaim, and we successfully fought it and said, wait, that's really a water resource, not just a wastewater effluent charge, because you're getting the benefit of having another water supply, and therefore we shouldn't pay 100% of it, and we won that. So that being said, I'm not going to tell you costs aren't going to go up. I think they will, Commissioner. I can't tell you how fast, but and will they still try to fight the outfall and use the outfall? I think they're going away personally, but
I believe one is still pretty good use, according to some scuba divers. They're shut down one. The other one is fairly well used still. Last I heard. A question on. Go ahead. Sorry.
I've heard the same thing. So, but
okie doke. A question on the homes in terms of people's home dwellers' opinions on rates. To what degree is it a bad PR model for those in homes, not myself, who feel that the homes actually benefit their neighbors who are multiple family, in the sense that those on the ocean do not provide a blockage of views for condos on the west side, that they offer quite a bit of green space to town, which at times was overdeveloped and overpaid decades ago, that they provide aesthetic beauty. just giving you some of the feedback I've had that, and Rob, we've had some new homes go up in the area in excess of 8,000 square feet, that those homes do provide high property value rates for their neighbors throughout the town. So when we talk about the rates for homes, what sort of a PR angle would you be able to provide is an answer to those in homes who make these statements and feel like they're sort of the stepsister?
Well, I think if I understand your question regarding the rates and PR, the single family homes, those that have 6,000 to 8,000 square feet and a significant amount of pervious irrigable space, they will pay more per 1,000 gallons than those that are typical indoor use, what you see statewide. I know you're not statewide, believe me.
Right.
But I'm talking flows more than I'm talking aesthetics here.
Sure.
And I think by pricing your water the way you do, because let me tell you what we did do. When we priced the second block, we looked at your flat charge and said, wait a minute, if you're gonna walk into the second block, you're gonna pay another base charge, because you're really using the water of two, not one. So we priced it that way, and then if you went to the third block, we said, okay, if you're gonna go further, you're using an impact fee, that connection charge. You're using my capacity, we're charging you for it. And I think that's really fair, and I think but I'm calling that conservation, and I think by matching that pricing to those demands is fair to those that are more stable indoor use. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but I think
Somewhat, sure.
I would say, I mean, in terms of pricing via property taxes, going back to where you are today, I have not been a big believer. I think the enterprise funds should stand on their own personally. And so it's not based on house value, it's based on use. And you're doing that over time. I think that's right. I think the pricing follows it.
Okay, and then lastly, would it help to perhaps through Marshall's mailing in the future to reinforce that we maybe have a rain meter attached to the sprinkler system where we're in a deluge in the summers, the sprinklers shut off, to have code enforcement maybe be more strict on sprinklers being timed too long or running every day, or, you know, sprinkling the streets, and then using drought resistant landscaping and plants and naturally occurring native plants rather than high water plants such as Schefflera and ficus, which are on the way out. So would those elements also assist everyone throughout town in maybe an environmental / conservation effort that we could undertake?
Well, I think that's very wise. The water management districts, as you know, whether it's South Florida, Southwest, St. John's, whatever, they all promote that. Xeriscaping and lack of, you know, trying to reduce discretionary water use, which that is the irrigation water use. That's what they're targeting, and that's what you're talking about, and I think that'd be valuable. I do know a lot of communities that do have code enforcement, and you know they give warnings on non-irrigation days and things of that nature, or irrigating at the wrong time. You could have policies that dictate that as well, if that's something that's very important to the town, following the guidelines of the Florida Water Management District. When, you know, 1 day versus 2 day a week. It's kind of hard to do 1 day a week in the middle of summer unless you're getting rain. But you don't need the water every day in December.
Right.
And a lot of communities do that, actually.
Right. Actually, should our rates be seasonal based on the summers and this late spring?
I don't think so. You know, there's only a handful of utilities in Florida I know have seasonal. Miami-Dade had one. I'm not even sure they still have one or not. I don't see that really anymore, and I think the way your structure is fine.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that answers my questions for now. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Peggy.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Evelyn?
Okay, couple of things. I think you can't make the assumption that because an apartment or a house is bigger, that there are more people living in it.
Right.
True. It's true.
Because there are a lot
Yeah.
of 3-bedroom apartments with one person. I think that also when you're talking about condos versus houses, you get, from what Rob said, most of our revenue comes from our base fee at this point. So it equalizes out because you've got a lot of people in condos who aren't here, but the unit has to pay a base fee anyway. You also can't assume that every house is year-round either.
Right.
That being said, I do believe that you should pay for what you use. And I also believe that we have to, and actually our permit says that we have to have water conservation. So in essence, what they're telling us is we really have to have a different rate structure for different levels of uses. I do have a question. If your rate structure, say, goes 0 to 10 and 15 to 20, do you get charged the higher rate on all 20? Or do you get charged the lower rate on the first 10 and the higher rate on the second 10?
Good question. You pay the lower rate on the first 10, and then you pay the higher rate the next 10, then the higher rate on the next 10. It's inclining. No, you don't trip to the higher rate for everything. It's additive, not cumulative.
Okay, well, to me, that makes it even more fair to have
Yeah.
one rate. Also, I think it behooves us not to have super complicated bills where
Right.
we're measuring everything under the sun to try and get things equal. That will just create way more issues than we have.
True.
Do we know what the average current bill is?
Yes, I would say it monthly, it's on that comparison. It's right there. 25,000 gallons per month for residential, it's $156 a month.
Okay, and what would it be if we went to your
That's
alternative?
I'm sorry, that is the alternative rate. The
Okay,
current bill is, I'm sorry, I misspoke, I apologize. The current bill at today's rates that were adopted about a year ago, it's $125.62. It would go to $156.17 at the alternative rates, effective
Okay.
rate.
Increase.
With the,
so
it has,
we're not talking about doubling a bill here.
no.
Okay, I had questions here. Oh, I know what I said. When I went through the papers, said they had numbers for finished water and waste purchased. And it is roughly 62%. The waste purchased is roughly 62% of the finished water from 2019.
That's correct. And do you want me to explain what that means?
Yes, please.
Okay, the finished water is the amount of water that leaves your reverse osmosis plant that goes into the pipeline to serve all of the town customers. And that includes indoor use and outdoor use, irrigation.
Yeah.
The wastewater treated is the amount of wastewater flow metered by Delray that goes to the sewer system. That's all indoor use. Any inflow and infiltration, water that may go through a manhole or whatnot, that's the amount of water being treated. And many utilities compare the two and say, well, what's the total amount of finished water versus treated water to kind of get a feel for it. And that's one reason why we recommended a cap, because the finished water is a lot different than the treated water.
Right.
And when we looked at the cap at 10,000 gallons for residential, if you go to the alternative rate, it approached the Delray wastewater number, which we thought was very fair, that the amount of water, finished water being billed through the meter for wastewater equated to the flow going to Delray. And we thought that was very favorable.
Okay. I think that pretty much answers what I had in addition to what other people had.
Okay,
Thank you.
you sure? You're still looking down?
I said, yeah, I'll come back later if I find something else.
I'm looking down too.
Okay, everybody will get one more shot.
I'm gonna look straight ahead now.
Oh, wait, I do have one question.
Uh,
Do you expect us to expand substantially? We don't exactly have a lot of buildable property in this town.
No, we do not. We had essentially no growth.
I mean, there probably will be a little, but yeah, so I can't foresee us expanding,
No, I can't either.
replacing and repairing and all of that, absolutely, but
Yeah,
not really expanding. Okay,
Could be redevelopment.
yeah, we're kind of in tear down mode here.
yeah.
Yeah.
Rob?
Yep.
Rob, could I butt in and ask a question again, please?
Sure.
You got one?
One question.
Okay, go ahead. And then we'll.
We've had- Yes, sir. We've had 5 unity of titles provided to properties recently. And I wondered if they are then billed, say 2 lots unified into one, they are then billed as a single unit, even though it was 2 lots previously.
If they're individually metered, it's a single dwelling
Yep.
unit on the lot, it'll be single family.
Okay, thank you.
That's,
Peggy?
Yes.
In one of their numbers, they did show that there are 384 homes with only 381 accounts.
That's probably why. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All
Good
right,
job.
grab it while you can before somebody else jumps in here.
Sorry, Greg. We're done.
Okay, I'm happy to be patient. I got a lot of questions. Rob, thank you for the
Cheers.
presentation. I'm gonna just start with some questions and then I'll go through some comments.
right.
First question is, you had said something about 250 million gallons to Delray or 250,000 gallons, but you didn't tell me, was that a day, a week, a month? Can you just give that the data again?
It's 250,000 gallons a year,
Yeah.
roughly. It's a little slightly higher than that, to be honest with you. It's
Like
about,
250 million gallons, I would guess.
Really?
I do it in thousands, but yes, it's millions.
Okay,
It's about, hold on, let me double check this, hold on. 365. It's about 690,000 gallons a day.
okay,
Uh,
great. Thank you for clarifying that.
You're welcome.
Few questions. On your actual report, not the presentation you made today, but your actual report, it was a PDF. So I'm going to say PDF page 10, which is actually report page 3.
mhm.
You have an error in there. So if you can correct that table and resend it around.
Yeah, we'll correct it. We changed the rate slightly too, so I'll correct that too. Where's the issue?
The error is the same thing that you actually highlighted in your slide today, which I had picked up previously anyway, which is 418 for the second tier for multifamily.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get that fixed. I saw that I was talking like, oh my
Yeah, and
God.
that doesn't jive with your page 48, table 3, which actually has the correct rates.
I probably copied that down accidentally. We'll get that fixed.
Yeah,
Very, very good catch. I'm also pleased you looked at the report.
I spent about a lot of hours on it. I'm a slow reader. PDF page 16, which is report page 9.
Okay.
You talked about an impact fee fund, but we didn't really talk about that at all today. Is that something we have? If
Yeah,
so,
it's the
what's the amount
connection.
of that?
It's the connection fees. That's the $2 million you have in connection fees that I
Okay.
want to use. We're recommending to use to pay the bond, I think it's a series 2001 bonds, is that right, Mark?
2007.
2007 bonds,
Alright.
the principal amount, you got a little over $2 million that fund right now. And, the issue for that becomes, if you think about it, if it's required to be spent on expansion capital or expansion related dollars, the debt you issued to fund the expansion of the RO plant several years ago is a use of those funds. And ironically, the balance in the account is about equal to the principal amount of those bonds. So we applied and said, let's go ahead and spend those monies, and that'll help on the rates, buying down the debt from the general fund as well.
Got
But
it.
yeah,
Okay.
that's what that was.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay.
And then if we go to PDF page 17, which is report page 10,
Mhm.
you have a pretty big salary jump from 2021 to 2022, 598.80 versus 726,581.
Let me see what that is. Oh, we have additional personnel.
Right, but then in the next page, isn't there a statement saying no additional personnel above the amount of full-time equivalent
I
positions?
thought there was, I thought there wasn't, but there obviously is. So, why do we have additional personnel in there?
That is, Matt and, Marshall talked about hiring on, hang on.
Oh, potentially backfilling the superintendent position at some point.
Right,
Yeah.
that's what that is.
Held
I'll
vacant.
fix reference.
Then we should probably
That's a good-
fix point B on page 18, report page 11, which says there's no additional personnel.
Yeah, we'll fix that. Highlight, yes,
I
I
had
got
the
it.
same one. I had the exact same point, same question.
Ooh,
Good going.
another detailed person. I like it. Sorry to steal your thunder.
Good catch.
All right. So that ends my question. So now we'll kind of go through some thoughts. I am very much in agreement that we want to have the water and sewer be self-sustained. So have all the stuff moved out of the general fund. Obviously, it's an important recommendation. Obviously, it's what other towns do. Very on board with that. But I gotta be honest with you, I think what you recommended today is actually not that great of a choice at all for our town. And it's not an easy answer, but we've got to kind of figure some things out. So we know we've got we know we have to have conservation. I get it. Marshall sent around to the commissioners. Unfortunately, it was very late yesterday, so I didn't get a chance to read it yet. But he sent around the South Florida Water Management District requirements. It does not say, I know this, it does not say it has to be a tiered rate structure. I'm not saying that's necessarily we should or shouldn't do it, but there are alternatives. Everyone needs to be aware of that. We don't have to do that. I think the way we're doing this whole tiering of rates and thresholds as it's being proposed, I think it's pretty flawed. And we've kind of covered a lot of this today, which is a lot of multifamily buildings have 1 meter only. So the entire concept of average use is throw it out. It does not make sense for our town. You cannot talk about averages because we literally, if you read on our town website, 50% of the residents are not here half a year. 50%. That's big. That's very different than most other towns. You compare this to a lot of towns that have a lot of commercial, that have residential as well. We're very, very, very different than every other town. So that just means this is a much bigger challenge to kind of figure out what to do with it. Obviously, the larger the building you're in, the more of the subsidy you have. If you have a building that has 500 units and 250 units are empty throughout the year, you could have everyone else using triple the amount of water and they're still never going to get to the first threshold. Where if you're in a multifamily building of 20 units, it's very different. And 50% of the people are gone. 10 out of the 20 units are empty. The threshold, the chance of getting to the next threshold is much higher. So you can't talk about averages. Averages just don't work. In terms of, and you don't know this, Rob, but this is just something from our commission. We've talked countless times about how we want to have green space, how we want to increase water absorption, this whole concept of first flush. The rainwater that gets absorbed into the ground is better opposed to being runoff. We want to encourage more trees. We've had conversations about how when people are renovating or building new properties, we want to encourage them to do more trees. What you propose is actually goes against the grain, the fabric of the town. You're proposing to penalize the people who are have green space. You're encouraging basically artificial grass, less absorption, more hardscape. I know you don't mean to, and you probably don't recognize this, but it's really what it's doing. In terms of the thresholds, I got to tell you, just as a first test, I don't think they make sense exactly where they are. And I respect your numbers, but the town manager and I went through my water bill just to take a look. And to give you a little background, I live in a single family home, 2 kids, wife, 2 dogs. And I am crazy about saving water. Like when we wash the dishes, I tell them you rinse a dish, you turn it off, you rinse the next dish, you turn it back on and off. Don't leave the sink running when you're brushing your teeth. Water the lawn and trees as minimal as possible so they don't turn brown. I use 25,000 gallons a month, Marshall told me. I'm a real conservative user. So there's something wrong with your basic thresholds if you have that kind of, and again, I'm not saying the scaling is necessarily wrong. I'm just saying I don't have the confidence in your actual thresholds the way you guys might have it, as in what's average water use. Maybe it's the property sizes are different in our town versus the other towns you were looking at. It doesn't necessarily mean your data is wrong. It just means it may not be exactly applicable to what we've got.
1,000 gallons.
Vice Mayor, you're saying that you're over 25,000 and they're saying that the average use is 10,000. That's a pretty dramatic
They're
difference.
saying the average use is 10,000 a month? I thought they said it was 20,000 a month.
20,000 a month.
25,000 a month.
For single family homes.
Right. So
25,000, okay. Oh, it's
So the thing
10,000.
we've got here is we've got a, we have a very strange lopsided nature of a subsidy. Call it a, I don't know, call it everyone, you know, a seasonal subsidy, if you will, or something like that. Where the bigger the building you live in, the more the subsidy there is for all the residents that are here full time. And by you moving around the thresholds, actually making the multifamily thresholds higher, I think you moved them from like 13,000, 20,000. What you've done there is you've actually accentuated an already lopsided subsidy. So that doesn't quite make sense either. And I recognize this is not an easy thing to figure out. I'm just pointing out that what you've put together so far just doesn't pass a lot of sniff tests with me. Just looking through this here. So what you propose, I actually think is worse than what we have in place. Now, I'm not saying our rates shouldn't go up. Our rates have to go up. I totally get it. But just to kind of also illustrate how non-robust what you've proposed is, if you want conservation and we had everybody drop their water use by 50%, we have to increase the rates massively. So there's something wrong with the way you proposed it. Because I mean, if you get too much of a good thing, what you're proposing actually isn't even going to work. So there's got to be some better way, some better framework to do this. I actually think a better solution based on what you propose, I think a better solution is just increase everybody by a certain percentage. I think that's what Boca did. That's what other towns have done. Maybe they only did that because they couldn't figure out, maybe they're grappling with some of these same difficult concepts. But just increasing everybody by the same percentage is better than what you've got so far, because what you propose actually, as I said, accentuates the lopsidedness subsidy of our current structure. And I think what you propose had like a 42% increase for single families, 21% for multifamilies. Like even that doesn't quite pass a sniff test of it makes a lot of sense. I think we got to look at it a lot closer. So I think we got to get our financial advisory board to look at this. I think the commission needs to look at it. And I think we got to actually really dive into some serious amount of data, not a few average homes versus a few average condos. We've got to look at big condos. We've got to look at small condos. There might be a much better way to do this. And again, I want it to be fair and I want it to be you pay for use. I'm not looking for a single family home subsidy or anything like that. But I think we really need to dive into the data much deeper. Obviously before, and I think Marshall's already worked on this, but before we make any changes, and John said we're going to go slow, we got to let every resident know what their past bills are versus what their future bills are going to be. I think we actually need to look a lot closer at what South Florida Water Management District has allowed for small towns. Again, we are a really weird enigma, this town. We're very different. So if you compare us to all the other surrounding towns that have a lot bigger commercial, you're going to find you're doing a square peg in a round hole. It doesn't necessarily make sense. I think we also got to let everybody know, by the way, what is the impact on the decreased amount of taxes? Because I think our taxes will go down if we move some of the stuff over. But then again, that's just basic data. I'm surprised what you said about seasonal rates. Our biggest issue is seasonality of 50% of the town leaving. So to not even, and I'm not saying it's the answer, I don't know if it's the answer, but to automatically throw it out and not even consider it, it sounds to me like you've got a cookie cutter approach and you're just trying to fit us into it. I'd much rather have us explore that. And if we have to explore it on our side and then give you some direction, that's fine. But I usually find that when people automatically throw something out, particularly when it's the biggest issue we have, they've either just chosen not to look at it or they've just run out of time or they just haven't really critically thought about it. So I would encourage you to not automatically throw that one out. Again, I'm not saying it's the right answer in any way. I'm just saying you got to be able to consider some of this stuff. But maybe we're also supposed to consider something else. Maybe there is a hybrid of a scaling, but then there's also a different fixed meter amount for different size buildings. Because again, we have this massive lopsided subsidy. The bigger the building you live in, the more your rates are subsidized. And you showed it in your table. 25% of the homes are in that first threshold, 75% are above it. But in the condos, 89% are in the first threshold. You're telling me everyone in a condo is really that much more of an efficient water user? No, it's telling me that the current situation is we've got a real lopsided issue. So we got to dive deeper into this and just see if there's a better way to do it. So again, my thought is let's have our financial advisory board look at it. Let's have the commission look at it closer. And I'd like to actually get all the data that you use. I'd like to slice and dice the data myself. And I know there's a lot of residents that would like the same. So those are my comments. Any questions on what I said?
You like to play, Mrs. Lincoln?
Well, I'm sorry?
Other than that,
No, Mrs. Lincoln. It's very good.
Back to you, Mayor.
Wait a minute. There we go. Excellent points. Thank you, Greg. Clearly, averages aren't working here. I totally agree with that. The concept of half of our town is gone. I'm not sure what effect that has on it, and we need to investigate that. Obviously, very clear. We have to run an analysis of what our current bills look like versus what they will look like when we apply the alternative plan that's been recommended. There's got to be some real easy software that can do that. So we can see and our residents can see what the effect is. So if it's not the whole town, certainly we should be able to do that against a reasonable size sampling. That'll at least tell us what the effect is. The movement of the debt over to the enterprise fund obviously has a beneficial effect on our taxes, and that can be computed easily. so we will know what the reduction in taxes are, assuming that
It is 16.
go up next year, so at least we can see what the net effect is. And that'll obviously offset some of the increase if we were to move forward on the recommendation.
Sure about that.
I'm comfortable, again, assuming we went forward on this recommendation, I'm not comfortable with the size of the first year's increase. I think we need to smooth that out a little bit over the 5-year period. I think 40% hit on single-family homes is a bit rich to start with. But that's easily spread out over a 5-year period. We could still reach the goal without the big hit the first year for both segments. I have a question, and when I was reading through the document, did I read it correctly that there are additional ready-to-serve charges as it goes up into the different pricing blocks?
How I priced the next block was I amortized the base charge, the fixed cost, over a allowance of flow, saying if you're going to use beyond your basic flow, then you should pay in your flow charge as if you were a second customer. That's how that worked. That's how I priced it. Instead of doing these percentage increases, our concern is this: we're starting to see rumblings about how these tiers are set. And I've got some other comments that was made earlier to address some of these questions. So that's how we priced it, so you know. So I looked at recovery of that base charge.
So it's built into the rate. There's not an actual charge.
There's not a second charge. There's only one flat charge, if that's your
Got it.
question. That is
Yeah.
correct. And
Okay,
it's totally-
got it, Rob. Thank you. Do you envision that there would be a difficulty in taking a significant number of actual invoices and then running those against the alternative plan? So that
No.
we and the residents can see?
No, there's not, I think, a problem with that, doing that at all. Right now, Mark is trying to look at the seasonal flows for, I think this is the residential class. And they're not that much, actually, I'll get to that in a minute. But yes, we could try to come up with some sort of table or analysis to help you out with that. What would the rates be on the alternative rate
Yeah, I
versus?
mean, that way we can see the actual address and say, okay, Greg, here's your bill under the new.
Right, we could definitely do
And I can
that.
say, here are, 24 condominiums. Here's what your bill would be under the new for this time period.
Yeah, I mean, what we saw, Mayor, first of all, when we talk about averages, the 25,000 is an average. When we design the rates, we don't look at the 25,000 and say that's what we're targeting. We look at the total flow of the class and the total units being billed. We show the average because that's just typical. And you saw on those charts, we got guys using 200,000 gallons and guys using 10 gallons. So I want to make sure you understand how we design the rates for that.
I understand. You have
Yeah, so I just want to make sure
somewhere.
you do look at averages to say, what's the system doing in general?
I get it, and that's where you have to begin. I understand.
You have to, 'cause,
But I think
in reality-
Greg's point though is right on. We have such a diversity in our population base here. When I say population, meaning EDU population base, that I think we have to drill down to specifics. And we really don't have that many.
yeah, we're
Only
We can-
464 accounts, so we're not, and when you take a look at it, the 80-20 rule applies here. 20% of the accounts represent 80% of the business here. So I think we can really drill down and get into real specifics.
Right. And we can definitely help you there. The other thing, as we talk about this line about multifamily and whatnot, you know, they are vacant, but you are charging every multifamily customer a flat fee, every unit. So that 100 unit condo is paying, you know, if I have 100 units and it's $44, let's say approximately for a water charge, whatever, that's $4,400. And if you look at the average cost per unit of, based on the gallons used, they are much higher than residential. I will tell you that, because there's less flow and a higher base charge there. And we did look at that. We are not trying to hurt green space. Please believe me, we're not trying to do that. And that's why we did steepen the curve at the end. But if you look at the first 0 to 100,000 gallons bi-monthly, the two rate structures are very, very close, which I thought from a water standpoint addressed what you need. Recognize
The condominium,
there.
the multifamilies are not the issue. We're not going to meter on every unit. It's not possible to do.
Not possible. I agree.
I'm not creative enough to come up with another solution. So the issue is going to come down to the residential units and how to be most fair about this and not to hook them into ridiculously high charges.
Right. I mean, I'll be honest with you, again, back to multifamily, just one quick second. Many communities charge less than 1 times per unit for multifamily. By way of example, if we charge $30 for a single family, the multifamily may be 0.8, 0.5 times that. Martin County's 0.5. Many charge 1.0. I thought keeping that was really good a relationship standpoint. But, you know, I understand where everyone's coming from, and the larger the building relative to the irrigation space, it can make it a heck of a difference. I tend to agree with the comments that when you look at customer specific, it can be different. I understand.
Yeah, let's, we want to be fair and equitable here.
Yeah,
We need to dig into the data. I think the Vice Mayor's remarks were spot on. And let's see what the Financial Advisory Board comes up with. And I really would like you to do quite a few. I mean, at least 20% of the population here, so we can really see what the difference in the billing is and dig into the specifics on it.
okay.
Okay? Any comments from anybody else?
Yes. When you talk about seasonal, remember that their numbers here, while they're broken down into either monthly or bi-monthly, this is a yearly charge. We don't pay our employees less in the summer because there are fewer people here. So you gotta,
keep in mind though, the bi-monthly base is being paid, whether the people are here or they're not here. It's covering much of the fixed costs.
absolutely. That's what I'm saying. So I'm not sure how you're going to distinguish with flow rates. Other than a private home, you can really tell. But in a condo, I don't know that the bills are significantly different.
Right.
All the more reason to go through all the big buildings, the moderately big, the medium, the moderately small, the small. The data is not hard to do. Actually, one of the residents came up with a pretty good way to do it all on a spreadsheet that bounced it off me. This is not a hard calculation to figure out. There's a lot of ways we can slice and dice this data.
Right.
The main point is there is a lopsided subsidy for large condos. Okay, fine, there is what it is. But moving the threshold up for them just makes a lopsided more lopsided. Does that really make sense?
Yep. Mayor?
Go right ahead.
I also think, as I was alluding to earlier, that we have a problem here with the multiple family being lumped in from everything from a 2-unit townhouse and a 4-unit townhouse, which in essence is much closer to a single family home with green space, with driveways, with irrigation, with pools that need filled, and lumping them in with something such as a 100-unit condo or greater. That I think that we have to take a harder look at this. I reserved a lot of my opinion, but I did when I spoke, but I do agree for the most part with the vice mayor, increasing the single family exponentially so much higher, and then looking at the townhomes, which should really be in a different category than the condos. I mean, this really needs to be broken up and dissected quite seriously here. Otherwise, you're going to have no one buying homes or townhomes, putting in fake grass. You're going to have a little bit of a PR problem here.
Well, I think that's why Rob was recommending one rate, not separate rates like we used to have.
I understand.
Yeah.
I do. Marshall's waving
Sure,
at
go
me.
ahead, Marshall.
Hi,
Hello,
Marshall.
Marshall.
How's
Hi.
it going? Go
It's been a
green.
long time since I talked. I haven't waited.
Yeah,
may speak.
where are you? Go ahead.
I have a question to kind of help me guide the process a bit offline. Is there a lot of concern over the current structure? Take away the concept of moving debt over. Were you receiving concerns from residents under the current rate structure? The current blocks, the current charges, don't think about debt. Was there concern or equity unfairness type issues that you were hearing on the way it currently is charged? I'm just trying
Yes.
before we jump off into complicated calculation or
I
methodology.
was getting significant negative feedback on the flat rate for sewage, that there was no charges, no charges in terms of water in, water out, that a flat rate was unfair. That was the only thing that I was hearing about rate.
And what I was hearing, honestly, is that, and I want to make a correction in given the perspective that maybe I was favoring one over the other, because it seems to be single family homes, you got condos, and you've got the multi-unit dwellings, the townhouses. And then you have Delray Sands. So it seems to me you have 4 major categories that we have to look at.
Right.
And we need to be fair. What I'm hearing is that there is this interest in having one price for water, period. I don't think that works. At the same time, I think we have to keep in perspective, and it's outside our consultants' perspective, that we're not raising the mill rate or the taxes, but if we raise the water, they're going to view it as a tax. And we need to explain what we're doing, the overall strategy, especially given much of this is caused by moving the debt over so that it is in the enterprise water fund that's separate from the general fund. And I think that's a big step
You only got
direction.
But remember, much of that gets offset. Much of that gets offset in your taxes because we've moved it.
Exactly. Well, but we also are not saying that we're going to reduce the taxes to offset it in the short or medium term, I don't think, right?
Yeah, we will.
You think so?
The debt millage. The debt millage would have to be reduced because it's an
It
obligation.
gets reduced because it's not there.
But the overall millage would still be dependent upon all our other expenses.
Correct,
Of course.
correct.
That's what I'm talking about. Okay, so I think first, the issue is trying to resolve those 4 categories, the condos, the townhouses, the Delray Sands, and a single family.
Well, let's back up and let's slow down here. Delray Sands is not part of this discussion. Let's put that aside. That's a tiny little piece. What we don't want to happen here is condos versus family homes.
Right.
Nobody has
Absolutely.
ever mentioned single family homes to me in the context of water rates. The only time that's ever come up is when we as a commission have been talking about it. I've never heard that comment made by anybody else. So we don't want to start getting any kind of conflict going here. Okay, we all want fair rates, period. The more water you use, the more you should be paying. Now, how we get there is what we're dealing with. That's all. But we don't want to start any of this nonsense going on here. So I don't want to start anybody thinking about it that way, okay? All right.
If I could, though, direct a question to Vice Mayor Bobby and Commissioner Gossett-Seidman. Have your neighbors complained about the actual water rates or expressed, I don't want to say complained, I'm going to express concern that it's too expensive for water here? That's what I'm looking for. Is that been expressed?
Yes, for 23 years.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
I was gonna say the same thing.
100%,
Marshall.
yes.
It's The
But I
single
don't wanna-
family homes for a long, I'm sorry, Peggy, go ahead. I cut you off.
No, I didn't want to jump in and say that, but yes, for 23 years. And if you tell them you're increasing them 43.82% and multiple families 21, you're going to have 25% of this town at your doorstep here.
What percent? It's 9%.
Diane,
It is 9% of the town.
Oh, sorry, 9%, right.
Okay. Now, let me
Nonetheless,
tell you, let me
I
explain.
just
to
heard
you-
that. I
Okay.
don't personally feel that. We conserve water, we watch the
Okay.
sprinklers, but you're still having a problem when 4,000 people leave for the summer, which is the rainy season, and the year-rounders are here, who've been here 20 years. Yes, yes, is your answer, Marshall.
Now, let me explain to you what the residents in the condominiums know about water.
Sure,
Know what it costs. They never see a water bill. It's paid for. They have 1 meter and it's paid for through their monthly or quarterly maintenance. They have no idea what the water costs.
so
don't-
they can't complain then,
They don't know.
right?
Well,
So
they
they
can't-
can't complain
no,
what they
but I
don't know.
will tell you that the board of directors finds out and they do complain.
Well, because they end up raising the fees. They
When
have,
they get, I'm telling you about what they know right now.
Maybe
Right.
we'll all move to your building.
When they get a 20+% increase, and then it gets explained to them, then they'll be unhappy.
yeah, exactly.
I
Today,
understand.
is water expensive in Highland Beach? They'll say, I have no idea.
But compared to other places, it really isn't.
No, it's not. But it's not a subject in their mind. Where
Marshall,
single family
Mark.
homes it is, in Greg's home, he conserves and he's got his children to conserve.
Correct.
Because I beat
So,
them over the head
totally
with it.
different state of mind.
Mayor, can
Okay.
I answer your question that you asked? And Marshall, I'll answer yours as well.
Please.
In terms of complaints, Peggy actually said it right. For 23 years, I haven't been here 23 years, but for the many years, a decade I've been here, I've had a lot of single family home complaints saying that
Yeah.
there's this lopsided subsidy for the multifamilies. The biggest complaint, I have not heard anyone complaining about the general level of water rates. Marshall, to answer that question. The biggest complaint I've heard now is we're reopening a can of worms that have been complained about for a long time. There's this lopsided subsidy, and this report just made the lopsided subsidy more lopsided. That is the biggest complaint
correct.
I have heard,
Absolutely.
and I agree with it.
And what is the subsidy that they're talking about?
If
I don't know what that.
subsidy is this, if I use 30,000 gallons, I pay a relatively high rate. If someone in a 500 condo building uses 30,000 gallons, they're getting charged as if they're using 5,000 gallons rate because half the people aren't there for half the year.
But
Oh,
they're
wait a
still
second.
paying the monthly amount. So how much does 20,000 gallons cost?
Keep in mind, that multifamily customer, not to interrupt, but they're still being charged the fixed fee on all the units that are there. And if I take those units, if I have 100 units, and you do, and take the 5,000 gallons on average for all those units, because half of them are vacant, and you get the average rate per gallon charged for multifamily, it's gonna be a lot higher than that single family. Second, 30,000 gallons to 5,000 gallons, two different flows.
Yes, my
Completely.
point is that there could be a condo using 30,000 gallons. That's one of the reasons why the condos had a lower threshold, which you then moved up in the first year.
But we also raised, but if the base charge is the same per unit, which is a level of capacity, and you agree that the condo is 5,000 versus 25,000 average, they're not even the same capacity per unit, and yet we're charging them as if they're one
And-
fixed charge per
and that's
dwelling
my
unit.
point.
That is very single-family friendly, to be honest with you.
And that is my point, is there is no condo 5,000 average. The word average is meaningless when it comes to the
Right.
multifamily.
That's true. Yep, that's true.
Meaningless. There is no 5,000 condo usage. There's a 20,000 condo usage with a neighbor next door that isn't there.
That's correct. And that's why each unit gets charged the fixed charge versus the meter size. That's exactly right. And that's exactly why we're recommending that, because we also recognize that if he's vacant, he still should be charged a readiness to serve based on that unit charge. I totally agree with you there. I will tell you, most utility industry don't charge one-to-one. One single family to one multifamily. Usually multifamily is a lot less, 0.5, 0.7. And that's not how we've done it here. So my thought is, if you're gonna charge them all as one equivalent unit, living unit with a single family or multifamily, why should they pay a lower flow charge if they're all one dwelling unit? And you're considered as one from a pricing standpoint. The 5,000 gallons is simple average of the units divided by the flow. We set the rates based on the total gallons that are there. And and I understand what you're saying, but keep in mind, when you're comparing 30,000 gallons of use per dwelling unit, the 5,000 gallons of flow per all the dwelling units, there is a different rate that's gonna be there. It's no matter what it's gonna be. But if that single family used 5,000, or if that multifamily used 30,000 per unit, the rates would be identical. And so I understand what you're saying, but as soon as you have different flows next to each other, it does produces variances that you're talking about. I totally agree with you.
I get it. And I'm not saying everyone should pay the exact same rate. My point is that I think we can definitely come up with a better proposition than what you put forward thus far.
All right, that's fine. And I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm just trying to show you my observations why we did what we did.
Yep, well,
Okay.
we're gonna use it and we'll try to all build on it.
Okay.
Two other quick things. There are no 500 unit condominiums in Highland Beach. Okay, I think the largest one is the one that Evelyn is in, and that's 238.
Got it.
Okay, after that, the average is probably around 100, 120. Okay.
Good to know.
Second thing is, even when people are away, they're still paying the flat rate every other month of 40 something and 30 something.
33.59.
Okay,
That's correct.
okay.
Mayor?
Any other
Mayor?
questions of Rob before we?
Me?
Yep, go ahead. Last one. You got
I
it.
just want to finish answering Marshall's question that I've not only heard complaints from single-family homes, but also from townhome owners. And what people say is they pay the same amount for a gallon of gas or a gallon of milk as a guy in a condo. That's what I wanted to just finish with. But we have to be fair for everyone. Eventually, we will get there.
And that's why you made them all the same.
Okay. Are we done? I
Yes,
think-
sir.
For the
Got my
moment,
marching orders, yes.
Rob and Mark, thank you both very much.
Thank
Mark,
you.
have the input you need?
I think so.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I think we're ready to move on. Again,
All right.
thank you both kindly.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you guys.
See y'all.
Thank you.
All right,
Bye.
Bye.
We've been at this now for almost 3 hours. Does anybody need a break or can we move on?
we can move on.
Okay. We'll move on to public comments. I understand there are none. Is that correct? No.
That's correct. There are none.
Okay, move to announcements for vacancies. There were,
Excuse me one second, Mayor.
yes.
Uh,
Yes, Peggy.
One of my neighbors had sent a letter to Linelda asking it be read today. I don't know if she got that.
He rescinded his request.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Just check. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, there's two vacancies on the Adjustments and Appeals, and there is an upcoming vacancy on the Financial Advisory Board. There are a series of meetings coming up. They're all listed on the agenda. I don't think I'll go through reading every one of them. We'll move on to Board Action Report. I direct your attention to page 83 in our stack. That is from the Planning Board meeting of 9:15. So if you'll go to page 83, we can all take a look at it.
Mhm.
This was a motion made by member Mendelson. And that was, this was in relation to the right-of-way that they were discussing. This backs up to when we were chatting about the right-of-way on A1A. And it obviously also covers the side streets. And the motion was made to create a map of the town's right-of-way. I guess this really not just the towns, but also FDOT's. And the map would be made so that it provides a mechanism so that everyone can see where their right-of-way, how far it covers into people's properties. And secondly, wanted us to provide a mechanism for someone to challenge the denial of a permit application. So that's up for discussion for our commission. Marshall wants to add something.
Yeah, if I may. So we took their recommendations. We are looking at that, and also to address some of their other comments regarding, its reach and scope is not to hit every little tiny project. We're really trying to keep obstructions out of the right of way and be sure that a partner, and it's hard to grasp that concept when you talk about permitting, but to make sure that all of our right of ways are protected, interior roads along with A1A. We will put together a map so you can see what the right of ways are. We're looking at an appeal process. We got to clarify that because if you don't do a notice, who is the appeal body to and who has the right to appeal? So we got to work through that a bit, because usually if you have a right to appeal, can a neighbor appeal a decision to issue or not issue a permit too? So we have to take a look at that a little bit with council, and we'll put a letter together and then to clarify a few points that they did make. So we are working on that. Ingrid and Jeff is jumping in on the details to that right now.
Yeah, it's not all that simple. It's who has the right to appeal, who do you appeal it to? What's the appeal process? It's a little more complex. Okay, so we don't even have to do anything. You're on top of it.
Right.
We're going to make some of these changes, bring it back to you all to take a look at. If you need some more changes, you can redirect it to the planning board based on those changes. Again, it's a fluid process that we've had mapped out. So planning board made its recommendation. Staff will work to address it, bring it back to you to see if you like it. Yes, no, maybe so, and we'll go. Either you want more changes, kick it back to the planning board with some other direction. Eventually, we'll get to a first read if all parties in play agree to.
Can you give us a time frame on that?
We might be able to bring something back to look at on the October 6th. If not, it would be the meeting thereafter. Because we're going to do that in GIS. To create that shape file takes a little bit of effort, for which would require a consultant. We have the expansion, the capabilities of GIS, that priority. We're a little limited at the time to create very complex maps. So we're working on that. That may take a little bit. In the language, we got to clarify just a touch.
I don't see this as a major priority unless any of my associates do.
Mayor,
Your hand?
Mayor,
Yes, go ahead, Peggy.
based upon common sense, I don't know why we would permit anything in the right of way, to be frank. other than
Agreed.
mailboxes and driveways and an occasional shrub, because the right of way, believe me, my yard has been dug up many times in the right of way for piping, for electrical, for conduits that a developer decided to run under my driveway to bury some wires. And it is also serving as a emergency runoff for a car or truck, might be run off the road. I don't know why we would even permit anything in the right of way. Right now, there's obstructions in certain parts of the side streets where if you ran over them, you would ruin your tires. They're not to code. I don't know why we're even looking at this, to be honest.
Well, but you need a map to show what is in the right of way and what is not in the right of way.
Well, this is, if somebody wants to put a shrubbery there, for example, it may be approved, knowing that they may have to remove it, for example.
Right.
But I know, but people are talking
backs
about
up.
gazebos and structures and bird
No,
bird
not
traps.
about
It doesn't make sense.
No.
Okay.
But it backs up to, I mean, I happen to have watched this meeting and
Right.
they got a little bit out of line on it. When I say out of line, meaning, I think they
Off target.
missed focus on this.
Okay. I was traveling. I didn't get to watch it yet, but I will.
No problem.
Thank you then.
Focus on this whole thing was, we didn't want people just coming in, digging up the ground in the right of way and hitting pipes and wires, etc. And they got a little carried away, if you will.
Doug, if I remember, we started discussing this, not because of people putting structures there, but
Right.
because of utility people coming and not telling us they were gonna be
Right. You're
here.
right. You're right, Evelyn.
I
Yeah.
mean, this has gone
Oh.
completely off
got-
where we were going
Right.
with it.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So we wanted they needed to get a permit so that we knew when there was gonna be a traffic
You're
backup
right, you're
or
right.
potential
Absolutely
traffic backup
They took a right-hand turn there.
with any of this other.
No.
I think,
And we will be assured the language is better, so this won't happen.
so Marshall.
Marshall, you're course correcting?
What?
Course correcting?
We will make sure that the ordinance version that you see next is a little bit more clear of what is
Thank you.
permitted or regulated. Again, our intent was not to chase down homeowners over small projects. That really
Right,
wasn't it.
Excellent.
So
thank you.
we-
And we
So
do
we
have a
should let-
conversation with the chairperson so that he understands what the intent of this is.
That's
Correct.
not to say when the homeowners do something they need to get a permit for, that they shouldn't be informed that they can't build in the right of way.
Yeah,
Right.
agreed. But let's kind of stay.
That wasn't where this was supposed to be going.
Mayor?
Yes,
May I suggest in the future that we perhaps kick around the ball and state what we would like to have said in the ordinance, the 5 of us with Marshall and Glenn, and then provide it to persons so that we craft it ourselves first before we send it off?
spot on.
Thank you.
Check that one off.
Second,
Thanks, Greg.
Okay, moving on. Next one. There was a request for us to approve bringing in a marine consultant, this Michael Jenkins, so that he could not just make a presentation, which apparently he provides at no charge, but also give recommendations on item 9B. And I don't know what 9B is, so could you
Oh, yes,
help us out on what 9B is?
piling height limits has to do with the guy who wants 12-foot high pilings as opposed to 4-foot high pilings.
Well, what do we need him for? We know we're not doing that, so. help
Well,
me
it's
out.
just so you have a sound scientific or engineering basis for your decisions. That's all they were looking for, is support to, you can't rarely say you can't do that. You gotta, generally you have to have a little bit of rationale behind it. So that's what they wanted the presentation, that make sure they're not missing something, the planning board.
Marshall, is he the guy who consults for Boca?
Yeah,
Yeah, we wanted to meet him anyway, right?
yeah. I mean, he's weighing in on like plan reviews and stuff that
No,
just,
no, but the consultant that helped them pick all their marine ordinances, the setbacks, the this, the that, the how wide your dock can be on a canal versus on a basin, all that kind of stuff.
So we know this gentleman.
yeah.
We know of him, right?
Okay, so shall we set a budget for this? A not to exceed number?
You have dollars budgeted for it.
Without knowing how much it is.
Let me vet that out for you and give you better numbers and options in more detail.
Okay, but we
Marshall?
want to, I mean, they're looking for this for their October 8th meeting, so can we have that for when's our next meeting, October 6th?
Yep.
Okay, so let's tentatively approve it and then set a number on October 6th so that we don't want to inhibit their progress, but I don't think we can approve it unless we have a number.
Mayor,
Yes,
just, we brought this fella up before and I thought that we had concerned that there was a conflict of interest since he was working on the sand dredging project. I know that that is been pretty much tabled or set back for a while, but we had discussed him previously and passed because he was involved with that. I just want to bring up that point.
Has nothing to do with it.
I have no problem unless somebody else does.
Just bringing it up because it was discussed
Glad
previously
you
at a
did.
commission
Thank
meeting.
you. I see this is a different subject entirely.
Completely different.
Understood. I understand, just bringing it up.
Okay,
Mayor, I just want to make sure I understand this whole point of this agenda item. This is to have him come in and consult just on piling heights only, correct? Since we're silent on that, I think, in our ordinance, or are we maybe not silent?
Correct.
What's the whole point of this? For him to consult only on piling heights because we have a gap. Is that correct or no?
I don't know that we have a gap. We just don't have a definition as to limitations. We don't have limitations in our ordinance.
We have a limitation gap.
they want it, yeah, that's it.
Correct.
Thank you for the correction.
They want to set a number, so they want him to come in and consult on it?
I mean, I can't imagine he's going to be that expensive to just consult on something as, small as that, right?
I can't see it being that expensive because the subject is very narrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can't either. I just
No, well, we should do,
say yes without a number.
no, great. I'm 100% on page with the mayor. I'm saying, let's get the number, but I just want to make sure that the scope of work on this is limited. We're not bringing them in to rewrite the entire building code.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
why can't that be done in a phone call with Ingrid to the gentleman? She used to work in Boca. I'm just thinking, why a big consultant fee and appearance just for a piling height? I mean, we sorted out the codes in marine facilities and docks last year. The vice mayor and I were on the commission then, and I believe Evelyn, and I thought we had it in pretty good order. So couldn't we just do
Because
this
they
in a
want
phone
him
call?
in, they want him in for a presentation on other matters, but while he's there, they want him to make recommendations as
So
well.
it's more than a scope of piling height then.
Right. Yes, the
Let
presentation
me,
there's other things.
for the sake of brevity, let me talk with Ingrid. I was on an EOC call. I did not watch the planning board meeting. I haven't gone back and rewatched. Let me get details before we
Okay,
go any further.
this isn't making sense to me. That's what I'm saying.
So that's why they figured, they knew that for him to make recommendations, they had to pay. The presentation that he was going to make was on other matters, which was free.
Okay, it just doesn't make sense. I don't understand it.
Well, that's the explanation.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
shall we move on?
Yes.
Okay, item 8, ordinances and resolutions. Resolution number 20-018, merit increase policy for non-union employees. Moving this over to Marshall.
Yes, I'm going through my packet to bring it up. So basically, what we will be doing after this,
Marshall, I think you might be muted.
am I muted? Can you hear me?
No, I hear him.
No,
I hear.
Can you guys hear him or no?
Yes.
I can hear.
Okay.
Everybody good?
Maybe you're muted.
Sorry, something must have happened on my side. I apologize.
No worries.
No idea what.
So, trying to find it in my report, but staff packet isn't in the same order as this. So basically, as you'll see, we'll have two ratifications today, but that left out the non-union employees. So basically, I put together a recommendation that you see in that resolution for a 4% merit increase. We're not tackling any of the other language issues that were bargained in the other unions. And it was to remove the hire date language in the personnel manual to allow for educational incentives for those employees as a added benefit. And again, this is going to be a year-to-year change for us. We'll do a resolution every year to set that rate. So I could answer any questions.
Are you saying, Town Manager, that the educational benefits of $1,000 for an associate's, $4,000 for a bachelor, could that change?
Excuse me?
Would that change over the years?
I'm not recommending that change. We could have that discussion in future years.
Yeah, okay. I just want to understand if it was stationary. Okay.
Anybody have any questions, comments? Need a motion?
I move we accept resolution number 20-018.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So be it. Do we need a roll call on that?
Believe so.
Okay.
No?
Good. Okay. There's no consent agenda, no unfinished business. On to new business. We have four commission meeting minutes to approve. March 3rd, 16th, 24th, and April 7th. I have a comment on the March 16th minutes. Anybody have comment on any of the other ones?
Yes, I have a comment on March 3rd minutes.
Okay, let's take them in order then. We'll go with you first on the March 3rd.
Okay,
What page?
it's page 103 in our packet. And it's down towards the bottom. And I am sure that I did not say the crosswalks are private. I said that the crosswalks are all public and anyone can use them.
Really? Wow. Yep.
So that's a big difference.
I would say so.
Yes, it's a big difference. Okay.
Just for clarity, that is the second paragraph from below, correct?
Yes, second paragraph from the bottom.
Okay, I see it, the last sentence.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So you just want to insert the word not?
Or just take it out and change it to public. Either way, it says the same thing.
Yeah.
We will make the correction to say they are public crosswalks. Thank you. Commissioner.
Anything else on the March 3rd?
For me,
Okay, let's move on to the March 16th on page 113. This would be second paragraph. An unknown gentleman from Dalton Place commented that ABC News reported that Italy has more hospital beds than the United States. That's not correct. It should be per capita.
oh,
more hospital beds per capita in the United States.
That makes more sense.
350 million beds in Italy. That's a lot of beds.
There's not room for anything else.
Good
Yeah,
catch.
with 60 million people, I don't think they could have more hospital beds than.
No.
That's all I had on that. Anybody have any other corrections on that one or the next two? No,
Mayor, I had a very long weekend and I have not been able to read the April 7th minutes, so I will do so. And if I find anything, I will provide Marcia with any corrections after the fact. I read everything else.
okay, do you want to approve the first three and hold the 7th over to next week?
Well, I don't mean to be particular about it. I'm fine either way.
Well,
but I
we
do-
can do that. It's not
Yeah.
a big deal.
Sure,
No,
that's
I
fine.
mean, I don't want you to approve something you haven't read.
Yes,
Right.
I'd have to read them. Thank you.
Okay, so
Just
let's.
ran out of
approve the-
time.
Let's approve the first three, and then we'll carry the April 7th over to the next meeting.
Right.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Good.
Okay, can I have a motion?
Sure. I move that we approve the commission meetings from the March 3rd, 2020, the March 16th, 2020, and the March 24, 2020 commit meetings.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Okay, and Linelda, will you carry the April 7th over for the next meeting, please?
Yes, and we'll make those changes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Is ratification of the collective bargaining agreement between the town and the Florida State Lodge of Fraternal Order of the Police. And I'll refer that to Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Before you is a 3-year contract from October 1, 2020 through September 30th, 2023. All parties bargained in good faith and gesture, and we came to a compromise and offering that you see in the contract. We spoke about these in our executive closed sessions that are permitted by law. So before you, you have a signed contract. Well, it's not signed, but it's been ratified by the union. So we're looking for ratification from the commission.
Are there any questions from anyone on it?
Nope.
We're all familiar with it. Okay, this one, I believe we need a roll call, do we not? Linelda, please.
Need a motion. Who made the first and the second? We need motions.
Okay, we need a motion to approve.
I make a motion that we approve the collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police, Highland Beach, October 1, 2020 to September 30th, 2023.
Second,
Okay, Commissioner Shoemaker,
Aye.
Commissioner David,
yes.
Commissioner Gossett Sideman,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bobby,
Yes.
and Mayor Hillman.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Okay, we'll move on to item C, which is the collective bargaining agreement between the town of Highland Beach and the Police Benevolent Association. I'll refer that to Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor and Commission. Again, before you is the ratification of the collective bargaining agreement between the PBA for our foreign law enforcement officers. You know the details we went through, moving to a step structure and then civil emergency comp time language and some other cleanup work in the overall language. I could answer any questions.
Floor is open. Any questions, comments from anyone?
Yes, sir.
Then we need a motion to accept it and move forward.
I'll do a motion for approval of the collective bargaining agreement between the town of Highland Beach and the Highland Beach Police Benevolent Association for the period October 1, 2020 through September 30th, 2023.
Second,
Okay, Commissioner Shoemaker,
Yes.
Commissioner David,
yes.
Commissioner Gossett Simon,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bobby,
Yes.
Mayor Hillman.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
And congratulations are in order to our esteemed manager for doing a fine job on this. Thank
I
you.
thank the bargaining team and then the employees and their reps. Good job.
Thank you very much.
Speaking of our town manager, we now move on to consideration of his third, not second. Oh, no, it is second.
Second.
Excuse me, second amendment to his contract. It is attached. You all have it. Last page. There is a correction right in the first sentence. First sentence says this first amendment. It should say this second.
Oh,
It's your
Thank you.
plan.
it's retroactive.
I'm sure we have all reviewed it.
I have something to add.
Okay,
Where it says where is it, the 5% addition to compensation, I would like that to say no less than 5%.
where are you?
Okay. Section V1 compensation. Effective October 1st, 2020, the town agrees that the employee's annual base salary shall be increased by 5% of the employee's annual base salary. I would like it to say no less than 5%.
Why?
Okay. Can I comment?
Sure.
Marshall has been with us for 2 years and has made really significant contributions to the town. And it's been felt by not just the commission and not just by the people that work at town hall, but it's also been felt by many, many of the residents in the town. And I think we all appreciate what he has done. And he's really been making a difference here. And I took the liberty of doing some research on what other town managers are paid, with not just the concern that he be paid fairly for what he has been doing, but that he be paid fairly for what he will be doing in the next several years. But also with the concern that as he known around other towns, that we might lose him because other towns get to know him. And as people leave, somebody might grab him. And also, apparently, unbeknownst to me, in the last, I guess, 10 years, we've had 4 or 5 different town managers here for various reasons. So I prepared a slide for all of us to look at. And Teresa, if you would put that up, please. When I was researching, I started just pulling up different towns in the county, and I happened to come across this that was already there. So here's about 18 or 20 different towns and what the salaries are for the different town managers. And there's large towns here and small towns here, the smallest one being on the bottom, which happens to be Gulf with.
Oh, we love golf. 235 residents.
There you go.
Let's move to golf.
And I guess a few of the very large ones, I mean, the second one down, if you can point that out for us, Tricia, is Boca, where that town manager makes 170,000. But what's interesting is right under it, the deputy manager makes 169, or that's the mid-range for the deputy manager. And the assistant manager makes 164,000 as a mid-range. And you can see the Boca manager is operates like a chief operating officer would in the private sector, where he manages managers. Where Marshall, although has a few department heads, is hands-on and basically does everything. So, and as you just kind of look down, I mean, I don't have to point out the different ones. You can see some of the smaller towns are, you know, in the mid to high hundreds. Marshall's at 157 now. Over on the right, you can see the car allowances range from a low of, I guess, 2,500 for Lantana up to 9,000 at the high for Delray. And I believe that Marshall, with his current responsibilities, should be in the $200,000 area, not the 157 where he is now. And if this was the private sector, you know, we could pop him up to 200, but we're not in the private sector, and I recognize that. But my thinking was that we should develop a plan so in the near term, we could get him there. So under the current plan that we have for him here, he would be getting up to the $6,000 in the car allowance, and he would be getting the benefit of some very, very good health insurance and a nice 5% increase. But I believe we should add to his compensation agreement a sixth point, which would be a merit increase clause that based on performance, his merit increase would be between 5 and 10% each year, a minimum of 5, a maximum of 10. And if he continues to perform at the level he's been performing, he would be able to have the maximum 10% increase, which would bring him to the $200,000 range in very short order. So that would be my proposal for us to discuss. Any comments?
So
That's
going
kind of what I said, only a little more specific.
back,
Are you,
Yeah.
so
so,
you're comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with that.
so Commissioner David, when you say no less than, that really does reinforce the opportunity between 5 and 10%.
That is correct.
Yes.
As high as 10, because I am in total support of this.
Okay, Peggy?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. The other day, I added up under how many different commissions Marshall has toiled. And then the number is 6. By that, I mean how many different compositions of this commission. He and I and Greg falls in there with 5. And that is an amazing amount of people and turnover in 2.5 years. And so I have to say, if we could give him a turnover in the commission bonus, I would also. But my point is that made, I'm sure, without any complaints on his part, made his job even more difficult. And then throw in COVID and throw in everything else we've had going on. And I am all for this. I think that it is a joy to go to work now for him, hopefully, and it is a joy for me to serve on this commission and have such qualified and reasonable and friendly people. And if I could have you over for my window party, I would. But I'm all for this. No, I'd love to have a beer party with the commission, but we can't. My point is, hopefully going forward, the entire commission with Marshall at the helm, with the tugboat pointed in the right direction, we'll attain some wonderful goals for this town. And so, yes, whatever we can do to keep Marshall from packing up and moving somewhere else would be great.
Okay. Greg?
Thanks, Mayor. I think the plan you created is great. And he's obviously getting a 5% raise this year. If you do the value of the other ancillaries we put in there, it's probably closer to 10%. Makes sense. is a little low, as you just showed. Great data. Hard to argue with the data.
Right?
So I'm on board.
Okay, let's,
Mayor,
yes.
in addition to the data, I mean, since I'm the newest guy really involved in all of this, new to government, new to working with government officials like this at this town, experience with our town manager has been over my 45-year career in high technology, I've come to really understand who is competent, who is it that you can trust, who is professional, and not arrogant, self-serving, political, difficult, but is respectful. And in each of those categories, I mean, I really rate the town manager very, very highly, top notch. And I would expect that would continue. That's why I support this opportunity to earn more of an increase, as long as he doesn't get a big head.
Well, listen, with this plan, he still has to earn it. So, and I believe he will. Okay. Marshall, if you would add that point, what is it, 6 into your contract, we will approve it.
No, it should actually be 5 and 5 should become 6.
Okay, we got an attorney, a second attorney here.
Way to go.
Okay, well, take care of it then. Thank you. Let's move on then.
Do we need a motion on this?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, so I'd like to make a motion that the second amendment to the town manager's employment agreement between the town and Marshall be approved as stated here.
somebody gonna second it?
I second.
All in
Okay.
favor?
Yes. All right.
Aye. Well, now, do you want a roll call since it's such an important one, or are you good with the ayes?
Do we need a roll call on that?
Roll
Huh?
call.
Okay,
Yeah.
Commissioner Shoemaker,
Yes.
Commissioner Gossett Seidman,
Yes.
Commissioner David,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bobby,
Yes.
and Mayor Hillman.
I want to think about it for a minute. Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks for
You
the
didn't,
data, Mayor.
you didn't convince yourself.
Okay, on to commission comments. Back to you, John.
Well, I really only have one set of comments to make, and it's about our chief and our police department. We all know what's going on in the country. Really, in many ways, a very disgraceful and dangerous time. The lack of respect for the rule of law has permeated and transported across all our major cities. It is just, I heard the number now has reached over 100 cities have suffered burning, arson, even murder. And, you know, the police are really under the gun, so to speak, literally and figuratively. And so I want to use my comments today, knowing what's happening in the news, to reaffirm my personal support for what our police are doing every day, inside and out. I realize we're a small town and we're surrounded by 2 large cities who are also having their issues. But we have, I think, a professional and well-managed police department. And I want to bring recognition to that, along with the town manager's excellent management operationally of what goes on, and for the safety and security of Highland Beach, which I think is paramount. If we don't have safety and security, everything else starts to fall apart. And so I believe Blue Lives Matter.
Well stated. Evelyn?
I agree 100% with what John just said, and I endorse it.
Peggy?
Yes, if I could have 2 minutes of your time. First of all, I completely agree with John and Evelyn. Very well said. I thank the police every day when I drive by and they're at each end of the town. That being said, last weekend I attended a meeting of Federated Women in Tampa at my expense, but there are a few things I'd like to share with everyone. Really good news for the most part. First of all, the president of the Florida State Senate was there, and an amazing guy. And he provided some stats I'd like to share with you. Mr. Wilton Simpson, Senator Simpson. Apparently, the state of Florida has at this time the best budget in the state, and rather in the country, the best budget, most balanced, and the most promise of a recovery
Wow.
from COVID. And he had come from a conference which reinforced this. The next best state budget is Texas, not a small state. There are a lot of companies, businesses moving to Florida because the Senate and the legislature and the governor removed the sales tax last year for companies to move their businesses here. And there are many moving, and this occurred before the pandemic hit. Secondly, the Panama Canal was completed with its widening, which will bring a number of new ships to Florida in terms of business, dockage fees. It's a boon for South Florida. They're working on improving 2 new ports, including Melbourne and Cape Canaveral, to accommodate ships that will bring business and then be transported through the rails to various parts of the country. Sort of amazing information we don't get to see in the news on a daily basis. There will probably be some budget cuts going into the next fiscal year, but they will attempt at every point to keep them low. 42% of our budget is just, well, 29% is tourism. So they hope to recover that. That has been hit the greatest. They're working hard on saltwater intrusion and water, and working on the St. Lucie cleanup, the Indian River, and all the damages that was done in the past by algae. And I did speak to him privately afterwards and reinforced he supported both of our efforts last year for funding for our crosswalks and flooding on A1A. And I let him know we would be coming back in the future for additional help. And he certainly said he would do what he could for us. The other speakers were the information I can make available to Marshall to provide to you. Just that we're in pretty good shape in the state, according to the people who spoke. The other concern from everyone is just making sure everyone gets out the vote in November. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Good report.
Thank you.
Greg?
I echo John's comments, and that's it.
Short and sweet.
I have a follow-up for all of you on a Zoom meeting that we had with Commissioner Weinroth and 3 of his attorneys, and Eric from the Parks and Recs for the county on Milani Park. Also, Glenn was with us, and Marshall, of course. And actually ended up being a very good meeting. Weinroth agreed that the beach itself was too small for the 125 car original plan.
Great.
And that the reduced format of 30 to 36 car parking was more appropriate. And Eric from Parks and Recs said that they had $400,000 in the budget next year meaning starting next month, for the initial planning and research. So they would begin to work on that. Thought it would be about an 18-month project to do the initial planning. So everybody was kind of like pretty happy. Commissioner Weinroth asked his attorneys if this was, from a legal standpoint, a two-party event or a three-party event, meaning do the Milanis have any say in this? And they were very specific in that they do not. That it's only between the county and Highland Beach. But he did suggest that the Milanis should be brought into the fold on the fact that the big plan of the 125 is going to be significantly reduced. That they originally sold it 30 years ago with the thinking that it was going to be a much more grandiose situation. So to make a long story short, he and I will have a conversation with the Milani family about it and bring them into to the thinking. So it's going to be far less intense, much lower impact. And that's where we stand at this point. Eric did suggest, however, that they might want to think about this as a phase one, see how it goes, see how much use it gets, with the possibility of expanding the parking at a later date meaning 8 or 10 years down the road. Purely conversation, that's obviously not to our liking, but it's conversation at this point. So in the event that this is how it proceeds, it opens up the contract. So we have to develop an amendment to the contract, renegotiate some things. Glenn's obviously on top of it. And we have a lot of work ahead of us, but it's definitely moving in the right direction. So if you think of it in terms of a baseball game, we're kind of rounding third base right now. So it's looking very, very good. Okay. And if I left anything out, I'm going to turn it over to Glenn. Glenn, fill in the blanks.
Yeah. No, there we go. Yeah. No, I think the mayor described the meeting very well. And as has been the case now for the last several months, there's been positive momentum building with the counties. You know, Marshall and I met with Eric Cole a week or so ago, and that was positive. I don't think we heard any surprises really at that meeting. It was pretty consistent with what Eric said, a little more detail, a little more information. So now it's just a matter of continuing to move this process forward.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else you want to add beyond Milani?
No, I think that was pretty good progress, Mayor. Good job.
Mayor,
Okay.
Mayor?
Oh, yes, Peggy.
Yes, sir. What about the use of the beach? Was that addressed in terms of the coral reef / rock outcropping and the fact it isn't really a sunbathe, dipping in the water beach so much?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. It seems that Commissioner Weinroth had seen the presentation that we made, that I made to you all.
Right.
France.
Great.
So he was aware of the young lady that hurt her foot.
Great.
We decided not to show that at this meeting because it was recommended by Eric that might bring on the need to have a lifeguard on the beach at all times. So we decided, okay, we'll leave it off. But Commissioner Weinroth, even before we made the presentation, told me that he was aware of the young lady that hurt her foot. And very surprised that we didn't show it. But the fact that he is now fully aware of the rock, of Yamata Rock, and the potential danger was also part of the reason that he wanted to reduce the footprint of the whole thing. And focus it more on fishing and scuba diving and snorkeling, and realizes it's not a beach for people to come and plan to spend the whole day there. That
Okay.
it's really good for casual use for snorkelers and accomplished swimmers.
And if I could ask, what about the potential for the educational angle to developing it?
That's kind of out. What Eric mentioned was, and please, Marshall or Glenn, follow up on this, that perhaps in the walkway across going to the beach, they could put some benches down with some educational signage. That's about it.
Oh, okay, too bad.
Yeah, I mean, we think that's a great idea, but.
It was.
Yeah,
Actually, if I could, I think that from, the park director Eric's standpoint, operation and maintenance costs were pretty important. And if the town insists on things like a facility where there's going to be nature or a lifeguard, because in the previous 20-year ago agreement, the town was the one asking for things like lifeguards and guarded parking. So if we do that, we're going to get a more intense use. I think that was the subliminal message, kind of, if you want all of these things, we're going to have 100 parking spots there. Nobody said that, but in the direction we're going, where you're talking maybe 30 or 35 parking spots, at least for the first decade or more, no bathroom, no lifeguard, no museum, nothing that's going to attract more people. I think the concept was to make it publicly accessible, but in a very minimalistic type of a way.
right. This is kind of, are you familiar with Hammond Park?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
This is the Hammond Park model.
Okay. Another question, Mayor. Who would our police force be the ones who would patrol that, or would they be providing a county officer or no one?
We would look at it. We'd keep an eye on it. It's in town. We're gonna pay attention to it.
Just wondered. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
One
Yes.
quick question.
Yes, sir.
I think the strategy of minimalist infrastructure to, ensure that we don't make this a hotspot is great. We don't want that. Is there any possibility of taking it down to 20 or 25 parking spaces? That's still even open.
John, we started with 125.
I know.
I'm glad.
I'm still pushing it. How about 15? And dirt, only dirt, no pavement.
Okay, we'll turn it over to Marshall. What do you got?
Yeah, Milani, I would concur. It's very good progress. I'm kind of excited that there might be the solution of a more subdued, minimal type impact type park that kind of embraces the resource, which is the model rock and potentially some of the archaeological elements that may be found on the site. So great work to the mayor and Glenn and getting out everybody together and getting Weinroth to listen and pay attention. So it's good. We're moving in the right direction, and I'm glad to see the doors open rather than closing. So it's really good, and it'll take some time, but it seems like everybody is agreeable. The mayor will just have to work on Miss Milani a bit. So we'll see where that goes over time, but she should like it as well. On the overall report, you will see these trucks driving around, the Frailman trucks. It's a survey firm. They are doing the survey for FDOT on the 3R project. So if you're wondering who's driving around the right of way, doing all this stuff, they're doing the preparatory survey work for their design process. And just to remind everybody, 30% plans for that project will be available next summer. 60% plans will be available March of 22, 90% plans January of 23, 100% plans in May of 23. They will bid the project over the summer of 23 and start construction most likely in early 24. So we are moving on that schedule. The very first step is to survey the right of way. So that's what you're seeing. So the project is continuing to move forward. Those that are watching, listening, if you know anybody, it's not too late for the census. If we can get our numbers up a bit. So if you see folks around your building in your neighborhood, do your civic duty and say, don't forget your census, and let your friends and neighbors know to please go ahead and complete the census. If they have any questions, they can call Teresa Hall or just fill out the census, and you will start to see some folks potentially trying to knock on doors and things of that nature to get people to respond. Strategic priorities plan, I got to put a few more elements in that, make some tweaks, hoping to get that to you all in your first October meeting, so we have the final product. We are in full conversion mode for our enterprise resource planning system, which is BS&A. I'll start using that more often. It'll be an acronym you'll hear, BS&A. So that system is going well. About a month out, and building's going to go live first. So that they're doing the data conversion, getting everything ready for our full financial system and community system, community development system, and utility billing. So talking utility stuff, don't feel whatever creativity we lead ourselves to within our final rate structure, the billing system can handle it. So don't let that ever be an issue for you. The billing system is just fine. Starting next week on the 21st, the elevated storage tank will be getting repainted, the upper bowl, as part of its normal maintenance. So you'll see some painters and people rappelling down the front side of the structure, but it's going to get the new logo. So it'll be kind of cool to see our new logo,
Yay.
full view of the entire town. Lift Station 5 is also going to start its project of reconstruction. And we did complete the evaluation of the sanitary sewer system. So Pat's got that done. He's kicked it over to the engineers, and they'll be making some recommendations, which could have some bearing, not significant, but some bearing on the rate structure discussion as well. If we don't believe we need as big of a capital project, then some of those charts you saw on debt levels will be slightly modified, and our capital cost will come down a little bit. Also, board vacancies. We talked about that at the beginning of the meeting. Linelda did put that in the Coastal Star. So if you haven't read the Coastal Star, you'll see our ad trying to get more of our residents to participate and kind of casting a larger net to our general residents as that relates. Also, an interesting fact, as of today, the clerk's office has scanned over 2,300 building permit files for over 63,000 pages. So we are moving into our digitization effort, getting us into a more paperless effort. And then lastly, with the police department, accreditation manager Aronowitz, Officer Schursty, and Officer Miller, kudos for helping a resident who came to, or we hope to be a future resident, came to visit their relatives, got locked out of their car, very frustrating time, and the officers did help them access their vehicle and stay with them until they could get in. So they wrote a very lovely letter. Solomon wrote a very wonderful letter to us, to Chief Hartman and us, to thank them for their hard work. So again, our police officers continue to protect our community and stand on that thin blue line. So with that, I'm done. Thank you. And, if I could, I think it would be appropriate time. I'm really humbled by the action you took on that Second Amendment, notwithstanding the financial reward, but the comments that each of you made to me mean a lot. As a lifelong public servant who's dedicated his life to the profession, it means a lot that you are seeing the value that I bring to your community. So I thank you very much.
Okay, a couple of questions. Marshall?
Yes, sir.
Couple questions. Where do we stand on the roof? And what progress are we making on the crosswalks?
Crosswalks, you should start seeing work. Pat was telling me next week, you should start seeing some of the ground improvements for the
Lights?
boxes, the electrical boxes that go with the equipment, so that converts all the solar. You'll start seeing those get set out and seeing areas for the landings. They'll get set starting either this week, late this week, or beginning next week. You'll still start seeing them show up and getting everything in. All the equipment has been ordered. It started to arrive. So now they're going to start prepping for the crosswalks. I'm looking, not to lean away from you at the moment. We are trying to find our bid opening is pretty soon on the roof. I apologize. I can't remember the date. 21st of what date? September 21st, thank you, Tricia, we are opening bids on the roof. So we'll have those estimates. I'll be able to share those to you as soon as I get those. So we have an idea what that cost is to replace the roof here at Town Hall. So once we get those bids, clean them up, bring them back to you for a award of contract, then I'm guessing they'll start. My guess, I'll probably have them drag their feet a little bit to get closer to the end of hurricane season. I would hate to see an open roof hurricane season of this size. So, so hopefully we'll get through hurricane season. Knock on wood, everybody that sees it around you. We'll continue on our good streak here, and we'll have up late fall probably.
Sounds good.
Early.
Thank you. Okay. Anything from anybody before we adjourn? Okay, at 5:13, we will adjourn. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Okay.
Be safe,
bye-bye.
everyone.
Take care.